Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 7 p.m. and this is the regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We'd like to inform all board member attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Mr. McCauley, will you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky?
Here.
Mr. Kleisner?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Excuse me. Mr. McCauley?
Here.
Mrs. Simmons? Here. Dr. Lawler's absent.
All right, with 6 members present, we do have a quorum. Is there anything that the board would like to move from consent to new business? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended to include the update of H4 approval of personnel.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Kleisner?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Mr. McCauley?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky?
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. The agenda is approved. It is now time for the board/superintendent salutes, and Dr. Layden.
Yes, thank you. As you can see with our audience, we have our spring athletics and activities that we'll get to in a second. But first, wanted to take a second to recognize Dr. Fuchs in the business office. We have received a certificate of excellence for financial reporting. It's through the Association of School Business Officials International. Annually, they look at districts, they look at auditing, they look at transparency, and just proud to share, especially on a night when we're talking tentative budgets, it's perfect timing that we're hearing this information and receive this from the Association of School Business Officials International, that again, we've received a certificate of excellence. So we'd just like to, just a moment to recognize the business office, Dr. Fuchs, and the hard work that goes into running a school district, the finances behind the school district, and the reporting that we do and we make public. So kudos to you in the business office. Thank you for all of your work.
Thank you, I appreciate it. This is for last year.
Yes. You're right, I'm sorry, it's the 22-23 school year, so hopefully we're again next year, and it's Jackie receiving the kudos. So hopefully we, tradition of excellence, and continue that. So.
That'd be great.
So this is Dr. Fuchs' last meeting, so it's interesting. It's fitting that this came up tonight, but thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And then second, I don't know if we are having, if Dr. Horn and the high school are going to start first with Mr. Rollman, or is it the middle school?
We're flexible.
We'll start with, we'll go chronologically. We'll start with the middle school. So Brian and Patty.
I'll give it over to Mrs. Batter.
Thank you. It's our opportunity, just as a reminder, we take time at 3 times a year to recognize our students in the fall, and then in the winter, and then our spring athletics and activities. So this is our opportunity to take a minute to do that, and thanks to our families and our students that have come out tonight.
Okay, thank you. I do want to thank the board for having us here tonight and allowing us to recognize our athletes and our coaches, because they put in a lot of time and effort and display their talents and represent our school. So I'm actually going to bring up Coach Martinelli to talk about his team in a moment, but I did want to just kind of give you a recap. Harder had 54 6th grade track athletes this spring. That's a good number. Our track 6th grade program is an introduction. It's once a week, so it's just a taste of what the sport is about. We did have 129 7th and 8th grade students this spring, which was a large increase coming back from COVID when we had only 54 athletes in the spring of 21. So we are really happy to see our numbers improving and the success that our team had. So Coach Martinelli, if you'd like to come up and talk about that, that'd be awesome.
Thank you. I'm the boys' head coach, Zach Martinelli. My fellow head coach, Alyssa Gavin, couldn't be here tonight. And our assistant coaches are Jake Kaufman, Kendall Lawson, Carrie Pitstick, and Jackie Hagan. So First, I would like to thank our athletes for a tremendous season this year. It was a privilege to coach you, and we are tremendously proud of all your hard work and achievements from this past season. Next, I would like to thank the parents for supporting the team. You are our volunteers for our meets, so we truly couldn't have had a season without you. And also, thank you for your sacrifices, making sure your kids were picked up. We had a great following at every meet, had parents in the stands cheering us on, and I can't tell you how much that helps our athletes. And lastly, you also provided refreshments for all of our meets and made sure our students were filled and ready to run their best. And lastly, I would like to thank Mrs. Patterman for leading our sports program at the middle school. She's a fantastic mentor to the coaches and also to the athletes that she works with, and Harder's athletics would not be what they are without her. So a round of applause for Mrs. Patterman. We had a great season this year, and it was highlighted by a lot of record-breaking performances and placing well in some of our bigger meets. Specifically in our conference meet, our 8th grade boys finished 2nd place, our 7th grade boys finished 3rd place, our 8th grade girls finished 3rd place, and our 7th grade girls team placed 4th. And then we had a lot of conference champions, which is something awesome and always a reason to celebrate. And a lot of them are here tonight, so might be put on the spot here. Our first place finisher is Grace Brunching for the 200-meter dash, and she is here tonight. Grace, give a little wave. Kate Beetham won the high jump. Our 7th grade girls 4x2 team composed of Lou Peters, Macy Jug, Aaliyah Van Wee, and Grace Nagel. Our girls 7th grade 4x4 team of Aaliyah Van Wee, Lou Peters, Kate Beetham, and Ellie O'Connell. Our boys 7th grade 4x4 team composed of Carter Johnson, Timmy Boris, who is here tonight, and his running mate James Linneman. So good job, gentlemen. And their 4th runner was Leo Ruiz. We also had a 400-meter open dash winner, Jacob McCord, who is an 8th grade boy. And then we had the 800-meter and 1,600-meter winner, Carson Kaiser, who is here tonight, but I'll talk about him in a bit. So hold on, Carson, it's coming. Our boys' 8th grade 4x1 team composed of Jacob McCord, Sam Hardin, Brody Guthrie, who is here tonight. Thank you. And Quinton Williams was the final runner on that. And then our boys' 8th grade 4x4 of, once again, Brody Guthrie, Gavin Schnurstein, Carson Kaiser again, and Jacob McCord. And then moving on to our sectionals. Our sectional, we are placed in a very, very hard sectional with some schools that are way bigger than us. That kind of brings me anxiety running up against, but our kids always kind of stand up to the challenge and do very, very well. So we have some more sectional champions, and also some of them are here tonight as well. Our sectional champion in pole vault for 8th grade girls, Noelle Putzler. Noelle is here tonight. Congratulations, Noelle, on being the sectional champion. Alex Peck in 7th grade boys discus, and Carson Kaiser in the mile and 800. All 4 of them qualified to participate in the IESA state meet and moved forward. Our full list of qualifiers was Grace Brunching again, Carson Kaiser, Alex Peck, Noelle Putzler, Elena Seawee, and Quentin Williams. At our state meet, we did have 2 of our athletes place in, once again, the largest division, 4A. Grace Brunching got 8th in long jump. Congratulations, Grace, again. And Carson Kaiser got 3rd place in both the 800-meter run and the 1,600-meter run. And the last note on Carson was hand-selected and invited to the PR Brooks Junior Invitational in Seattle, Washington, which ran on June 12th. He competed against the nation's best runners and ended up getting 10th place and ran a personal record of 4 minutes and 30 seconds, which has smashed every single school record that we have here at the middle school. And after talking to the high school coach, he is 1 second off our freshman record at the high school already as an 8th grade boy. So a round of applause for Carson. Lastly, I just wanted to thank again all of our athletes for coming in tonight. Truly, it was a remarkable season, and you guys made it that way. I want to thank all my assistant coaches and my fellow head coach. It's a tremendous blessing to be able to coach with them. And lastly, and I might be watching at home, so I gotta say it, my wife, for dealing with our 1.5-year-old and balancing that life at home and allowing me to pursue my passion. So thank you for your time tonight, guys.
I do just want to ask the athletes that are here to stand for one final round of applause for all of you from the middle school. Stand up, gentlemen. You earned it.
Mr. Faulkner and Mrs. Patterman, is that it from the from the middle school?
Correct.
From Harder? Good, thank you. Dr. Horn? Dr.
High school, turn over to our athletic director, Mr. Holmes.
Thanks, Dr. Horn.
Mr. Martinelli, Ms. Patterman, I'm sorry, but this is going to be a little longer than that one. So, Dr. Layden, Board of Education, again, it's a pleasure to be here. We always appreciate the opportunity to highlight our students and their accomplishments. Obviously, middle of June is very difficult to get many of them here. We do have a scattering of student athletes and one coach here tonight that will also speak, but I have the pleasure of highlighting many of our 7 sports that operate in the spring. Before I get too far, there's no way that any of this gets accomplished without the support of our cabinet, our Board of Education, and the crew at Kaneland High School, especially Dr. Horn. He's been a tremendous support over the last 2 years, and I'm sure we'll continue to see him in his new role, but at many of the games, and we've already got you penciled in for the first football game. So we also have 3 seasonal assistant ADs in Brock Feast, John Pavlak, and Stephanie Douglas, and they put in tireless hours right after the day is over until all our events are done. And along with our amazing coaches, we have over 100 coaches, both paid and volunteer, that support our students at the high school. So again, it's a very collective community effort to get everything done. We really appreciate them. I'm going to start with baseball, and fortunately we have 2 baseball players that are going to share the highlights of this year's baseball season.
Hi, my name is Zach Conrad, and I was a starting catcher today for this year for the varsity baseball team. I will be continuing my academic and athletic careers at Elmhurst University. I'll be studying finance and playing baseball.
I'm Jackson Kottmeyer. I was a pitcher for Kaneland High School. I'll be attending Lewis University next year to play baseball. Undecided right now, but still thinking.
Both of us, we want to thank you guys for your time and allowing us to speak. We really appreciate it to talk about our program, and for me, it's something that changed my life. So the Knights baseball program altogether was pretty successful on all 3 levels. The freshman team featured 29 players this year and worked through a split squad schedule, utilizing our volunteer head coaches or volunteer assistant coaches and being able to play 2 games on the same day in different locations, giving our players as many opportunities as possible. The freshmen finished 2nd Interstate 8 and had an overall record of 17, 10, and 1. While the sophomore team also finished 2nd in the Interstate 8 and had an overall record of 17, 7, and 1. The varsity team went 20-12 this year and finished 2nd in the Interstate 8 conference with a 10-4 record. We're right behind Morris, who finished 3rd in state. Some of the varsity season highlights. The baseball and softball teams had another successful joint fundraiser to raise funds for their spring break trips. Both the baseball and softball played in highly competitive tournaments in Gulf Shores, Alabama, while it snowed back home. Varsity went 3-1, and our reserves went 1-1. The team accomplished the goal of a 21 season by finishing with the 20-12 record this year. We had 4 players named All-Conference and 1 honorable mention, along with multiple players who were in All-Area and 1 player with All-State. We had 11 players named to the Interstate 8 Academic All-Conference team, along with 4 who were honorable mentions. The baseball team earned the IHSA Team Academic Award for 11th time in 13 years, which means the entire team had a GPA of 3.0 and above. The team also beat Batavia for senior night again, and we donated the gate to a Kaneland individual in need. Of the 11 seniors on the team, 7 of us are going to play college baseball and continue our academic careers.
We also have some individual recognition we'd like to include. Matthew Brunsheen, senior, will be continuing his education and baseball career at ECC. He was named Interstate 8 First Team All-Conference and the Daily Chronicle All-Area First Team. Jackson Kottmeyer, senior, I'll be continuing at Lewis University, Interstate 8 All-Conference First Team, Daily Chronicle First Team All-Area, and Beacon News All-Area Honorable Mention. Zach Conrad, senior, who will be continuing his education and baseball career at Elmhurst University, Interstate 8 First Team All-Conference, and Daily Chronicle Second Team All-Area. Parker Violet, senior, will be continuing his education and baseball career at St. Xavier University. He was named Interstate 8 All-Conference First Team, Beacon News First Team All-Area, Daily Chronicle First Team All-Area, and IHS BCA First Team All-State. Alex Schieffer, senior, will also be attending St. Xavier next year, and he got Daily Chronicle Second Team All-Area. And then finally, Tom Thill, who's a junior, won Interstate 8 All-Conference Honorable Mention and Daily Chronicle Second Team All-Area. Also playing baseball next year, Max Woodward at Morton College, and Brady Need will be at Waubonsee Community College. We also have some team awards voted on by the team. MVP Offense was Parker Violet. MVP Defense was Anthony Campisi. MVP Defense Infield, Matthew Brunsheen. Most Improved, Dylan Borshowitz. MVP Pitcher, Jackson Kottmeyer. Stolen Base Leader, Zach Ramos. Mr. Kaneland, Parker Violet, and Zach Conrad. And finally, the most important award, the Jeff Malwig Award, awarded to Matthew Brunsheen and Zach Conrad. Finally, Coach Aversa would also like to recognize his coaches, Coach Hallahan, Coach Foster, and Coach Razzo at the freshman level, Coach Chirac and Coach Baccio at the sophomore level, and Coach Smedley and Coach Clayson at the varsity level. Coach Razzo, Coach Baccio, and Coach Clayson all played for Coach Aversa in the past years and have done an incredible job in passing on the Kaneland baseball tradition to the next group of athletes year in and year out. Thank you.
You guys are a hard act to follow. Boys lacrosse, Coach Carrier and Coach Farrell are actually up in the suburbs running summer league tonight. They set a school record with 9 wins and won our first playoff game ever in lacrosse, in boys lacrosse. Leading scorers this year were senior Adam Leach and junior Garrett Wills. They graduated 5 seniors in Leach, Brandon Pirelli, Caleb Thompson, Mitchell Morong, and Brendan Lindstrand, and he wanted to thank them for their leadership this year. The team had 8 players. While we do not have boys lacrosse within our conference, these young men do qualify for the academic all-conference awards, and they had 8 players on the Interstate 8 all-conference, all-academic team. And I do have to add a thanks to both of our coaches. Lacrosse in general across the state of Illinois continues to get a bad rap as far as its culture. We also see teams sometimes that don't have the nicest disposition when we're playing, and I have to give a lot of credit to our 3 coaches, and our players as well, because when we first started lacrosse and I stood on the sideline, I thought, holy cow, that wouldn't happen in a basketball game. But our kids and our coaches have really built a very positive culture, and it's very positive to see, and I like how we continue to do that. So, Coach Perillo, our girls and boys soccer coach, he is unfortunately not able to attend. He was expected to be here, and then suddenly they have both grandchildren tonight, so he said he'll probably be in by 8. The varsity girls finished with a record of 13-8. They won the I-8 conference with a tie with Sycamore. They outscored their conference opponents once again 51-3 this year. Our JV finished second in conference play, and I'd like to recognize our new JV head coach, Kate Ozarka. She's been a tremendous addition to our coaching staff. They had 5 all-conference players in Maddie Schrader, Jade Schrader, Casey O'Brien, Kyra Lilly, and Zoe Gannon. They also had 3 conference honorable mention players in Erin Duchette, Natalie Myers, and Hannah Boyer. They had 18 academic all-conference athletes and 2 academic honorable mention athletes, and I'm going to talk about academic all-conference in a little bit when we're done. They lost in the regional championship in penalty kicks, again to Sycamore. They actually lost twice to Sycamore in penalty kicks within 10 days. It's amazing to me that we continue, Sycamore and Kaneland have outstanding soccer programs, and the state continues to put us in the same regional every year, but it's an outstanding, and it was amazing how many people were at that regional game. So they also had 2 players recognized by the state. Maddie Schrader was all sectional. Jade Schrader, her sister, was all sectional honorable mention, and Maddie Schrader was co-MVP of the year. This is the 4th year in a row now for girls soccer that they have held a position of co or sole MVP of the league. So congratulations to our girls soccer program. We can clap for them. That's okay. Girls softball, Maddie Mikos, unfortunately will be going in a different direction. She's done an outstanding job. She's only been with us 2 years, but they've won back-to-back regionals. And she took over for our veteran coach and has done an outstanding job. She's going to further her education and go into athletic training, and I think she'll be excellent at it. But they were 12-14-1, and as I said, they won the regional championship. They beat 2 teams, not 1, but 2 that were outranked and better teams than they were all season. But talk about culminating and coming to and playing your best ball at the end. They certainly did that. I also want to thank our parents and our athletes, along with our sports boosters. We held the regional for girls softball as well as the super sectional, and I think we've held the super now for about 12 years. But those groups of individuals work very hard, even on the nights when we weren't playing, to provide concessions and directions for our fans. It was an excellent atmosphere. It was a great way to showcase Kaneland. The girls softball team had some all-conference athletes. Angelina Campisi, Isabella Strambes, Sammy Dunn, and Bryn Woods were all conference, and Corinne Pugh was honorable mention. Bryn Woods was all area. Isabella was all area honorable mention, along with Sammy and Angelina. And the 2024 Illinois Coaches Association Class 3A All-State Softball team, the second team included our own very Bryn Woods. So congratulations to girls softball. And now I'd like to bring up Coach McElroy and talk about boys tennis.
Hello, I'm Luke McAvoy, and this is my coach, Coach McAvoy. And in my junior year, I served as the co-captain of the boys tennis team. The boys tennis team finished their season 2-14 overall in dual meets and 0-5 in the conference, with several close meets decided by only 1 match. They finished 7th at the Grays Lake tournament, and out of 8 teams, and 8th at the Harlem Invite against 2A teams as a 1A school. At the conference tournament, both singles players placed 4th, and the number 2 doubles team placed 5th. We got our first ever seed for sectionals when Noah Pollock got the 6th seed for the singles division. The team got their first match win at sectionals when their 1 doubles team, Luke McVoy and Gabe Delgado, pulled a 5th place, and the team pulled out a 5th place finish and had in the sectional tournament, which is the highest in school history. We also had several players named academic all-conference.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mr. Rollman for all of his support, especially as a new coach. I've been on the girls fresh off, but it's my first year with the boys team. And also Ellie Taylor, one of our girls players that helped out since we don't have an assistant. It's always nice to have that extra support. And just the guys, they were a great group of guys to work with and a lot of fun. And I love how hard they worked and really showed up and wanted, well, most of them, our core group showed up and really wanted it.
The Board of Education approved several sports in the last, 6 years since I have had the pleasure of being the athletic director, and boys tennis is one of those, lacrosse being another, and those programs continue to grow each year. That's the largest number of boys tennis athletes we've had. Coach did a great job, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring those sports forward to our kids because they're certainly interested in those. Coach Franklin, our girls track and field coach, is out of town tonight, but he did want to first of all thank the assistant coaches who put in a lot of caring and coaching this year: Lindsay Giordano, Maya Johnson, Trevor McCowan, and Richard Havron. I personally want to thank Coach Franklin as well, as he is stepping down from his head coach duties as the girls track coach. He'll continue coaching cross country for us in the fall as well. We did move from 2A to 3A in girls track and field. We had a much more competitive schedule this year that we worked on. They are the second smallest 3A school in girls track and field. The challenge pushed us to be better since we were hanging out with the most competitive region in the state for 3A. Large improvements in personal records were common, and our team stepped up to the challenge. Coach Franklin reports that the team highlights included undefeated in dual conference meets this year. They were second place in the Gary Egler invite early in the season, the Megan Sporney invite, they were third, the Ottawa Frick invite, they were second. Kaneland has taken first or second, I think, for 4 years in a row now at that meet in Ottawa. And they were second in the I-8 conference this year. State athlete qualification and state finals, we want to highlight Cora Heller for qualifying for the 3A pole vault. She ended up in 9th place, which makes her an all-state selection in girls track. And that's our girls track report. Last but not least, boys track, I believe we have. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Colin Rudman. I was a senior this year on the Kaneland track and field team. I ran for 4 years, so this is my final year, and it's definitely my favorite. The boys track and field team had a very memorable season. Our 84 student athletes did an excellent job of living up to our OGT mindset and doing everything together. I'll read off some of the highlights from our season this year. We had an incredible season. Starting off the year in indoor season, we won the indoor Joel Poppenfuss Huntley Invitational. That was our first time running that meet. And then going into the outdoor season, we won the Peterson Prep Invitational for the 6th time in 7 years, despite the fact that we ran at West Aurora. We won the Interstate 8 Conference Championship for the 7th year in a row, scoring a conference record of 194 points. One of our athletes broke the indoor 1,600 meter school record. We had an athlete break the freshman 800 meter school record. We had a freshman relay break the freshman invitational 4x4 meet record. We had another athlete break the 3,200 meter school record. And then we qualified 6 athletes for the IHSA Class 3A State Championship, despite the fact we're the smallest school in the sectional by 550 students. Our state qualifiers included Logan Ehlers in the long jump, Kyle Rogers in the pole vault, and he kept up the streak of 41 years in a row. Kaneland has qualified at vaulter, the state meet, so a lot of pressure on him. Freddie Hassan qualified for the high jump. Brady Batustek qualified in discus. Evan Nosek qualified in the 3,200 meter. David Valkanov qualified in the 3,200 meter. He's the one who broke the school record for the 3,200 meter. And then myself, Eric Ramos, Tyler Rebas, and Gavin Smith all qualified in the 4x400 meter. Gavin Smith is a freshman. 3 of those athletes earned all-state honors, even though we were moved up to 3A this year. David Valkanov and Evan Nosek, both in the 3,200 meter, took 8th and 9th place and are the 2 fastest 3,200 meter runners in school history, running 9:10 and 9:12 in the 3,200 meter. And then Freddie Hassan took 7th in high jump. And then me personally, I'd like to thank the coaching staff this year and for everything they've committed to the program, because we have one of the, I think, greatest groups of coaches in all of athletics. I'm a little biased, but, and then I'd also like to thank the families and the community that we have here, because especially this year, they accomplished a lot for us and they fought a lot of things for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
When I stand up here and say this is the best job I've ever had, it is, and that's why. Because our students do such an excellent job in the classroom, out in the athletic arena, and then they were able to come here and articulate how much they appreciate the opportunities and how much they take advantage of the opportunities that you provide. I wanted to wrap up not only our spring, but our season as a year with a few numbers for you, and we've provided those for you. We'll just start with the spring. We had 315 total athletes in the spring. 235 of those were considered varsity athletes. 46 of those athletes were all-conference athletes. That's 20% of our athletes. 5 were honorable mention all-conference. 92 of those 235 varsity athletes, and I say varsity because only varsity athletes are eligible to be all academic. 92 of our 235, that's 39%, had a GPA of 3.5 and above. I said 4.0 and plus because depending on what schedule you have. 31 more of those students were academic all-conference honorable mention, which means they had at least a 3.0 GPA or above, another 13%. That means 123 of our spring athletes out of 235 that were eligible had a 3.0 GPA or higher. That's 52% of our athletes, and I think that's outstanding. School year by numbers, we had a total of 892 total athletes for the 23-24 school year. 494 were varsity athletes, and when we talk about 892, that includes athletes that come back for a second sport and sometimes a third sport. We had 90 all-conference athletes throughout the year, 18.2%. 20 all-conference honorable mention athletes at 4%. 205 academic all-conference athletes, 205. 41% of our varsity athletes met the requirements to be academic all-conference. 91% of the academic all-conference honorable mention athletes, I'm sorry, there were also 91 academic all-conference honorable mention. So that gives us 296 students out of a possible 494, that's 60%, that got a GPA of 3.0 or higher. So again, I think a lot of credit goes not only to our coaches and our student athletes, but to our staff in the classroom, and all the supporting staff, our counseling staff, our paraprofessionals, all of those individuals that play a role, and certainly, and not saying this least, our parents. We clearly instill in this community the importance of being a student athlete, and I think these numbers reflect that, and it's a pleasure to be associated with them. Thank you very much.
That's as David said, it's a hard act to follow. Our students, that's a hard act to follow, following David and the update from athletics, especially given the academic bent to it, which is really nice to hear, especially tonight, because under J5 or J6, you're going to hear more about academics and more updates in that area. But thank you again to our families and our coaches, and just the year, the amount of time and dedication that our athletes put into academics and their sports. There's a lot of success and a lot of great things with all of our students. So thank you for coming out tonight, and that's all I have for salutes. I don't know if any board members had anything.
All right. The board appreciates everyone in attendance this evening and invites you to stay as we move on to the new business portion of the meeting. We understand that not everybody is able to stay for the entire meeting and want to make sure you know that this is an open meeting. So you are able to come and go as you please, and we look forward to seeing you at future meetings. Thank you. Okay, tonight's consent agenda contains the following information. Approval of accounts payable and payroll for June 2024, approval of the treasurer's report, May 2024, approval of minutes of the May 29, 2024 regular meeting, approval of personnel, approval of destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from December 2022, approval of memorandum of agreement for executive director of Kaneland Arts Initiative, approval of the handbooks for support staff, second reading, approval of revised calendar for 2024, 2025, and 2025, 2026 school years, approval of amendment to Dr. Bogan's 2023-2004 employment contract, approval of non-speak educational support staff salary increases and substitute seasonal rates for 2024, 2025, approval of Kaneland and Fox Valley Career Center administrator contracts and salary increases for 2004, 2025, and approval of the Valley salary benefit recommendation for 2024, 2025, approval of bid for KHS track improvements project, and the following informational items: student suspension data report and the Freedom of Information Act report. That's a lot. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent items listed.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
6-0, the consent agenda is approved. Okay, we will move forward to the public comments portion of the meeting. At this time, we have no one signed up, so I won't give you the spiel. But just a reminder, there is a second opportunity at the end of the meeting to sign up for public comments and speak if you'd like to. So, jumping right into it, new business. The first item of new business is the approval of the Kaneland CUSD 302 2024-2025 tentative budget. Dr. Bogan.
I do have a slideshow presentation this evening. Also in front of you, you have a binder that has the 24-25 tentative budget. It is laid out with a summary, revenues, expenditures, the bond schedule, and then also fund balance information for the year. But to go through the tentative budget, we are going to go over a few items tonight. Those include a review of the budget calendar, the 23-24 budget review, budget highlights for next year's budget, 24-25, as well as going through budget assumptions, some information, a revenue expenditure summary, and then also an operating fund review summary, and then there'll be time for questions. As I'm going through this, please feel free to stop me, ask any questions that you may have. Just to go back, in the front of your binder, you do have a copy of the budget calendar. So we're pretty much always working on the budget, as you can see. Every month there's something to do. So in September, we will have our final budget that you will be asked to approve, and then literally it starts back up again. By December, you're getting financial projections, things like that, and you're always hearing updates. So there is a detailed copy of that, also a description of month to month what's happening of that. But just to go through some highlights from the current year's budget for this past year. Last September 2023, the board adopted a $75.5 million operating budget with a total budget of $89.6 million. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to remember to advance forward. As of June 20th, 2024, Our actual operating expenditures were approximately $73.5 million, with total expenditures at about $87.5 million. In October, when we present our final audit, these numbers may differ slightly, but again, those final numbers will be presented come October. During this past school year, we did see a student enrollment decrease of approximately 1.9% of total students. So that's about 76 students that we saw. A couple of other things for this year. This past year, there were increases. KE staff received approximately a 4.29% increase. Speak and non-speak staff received approximately a 6.5% increase, and then administration had approximately 5% in increases. I think that's the right slide. Yes. This past year, the district received approximately $7.3 million in evidence-based funding from the state. Something important to note here, that was approximately $61,000 more than the previous year. Each year since EBF has been instituted, the district has received a little bit less each year in additional monies, and one of the reasons for that is the move from Tier 2 to Tier 3. So as you move up in the tiers and you get closer to your adequacy target, you receive less of new funding from the state. So there does come a point when you sort of level off and you receive what you've received in the past, but there won't be necessarily new monies associated with that. Currently, we are waiting on one mandated categorical payment from the state. It's about $750,000. During this last year, we actually did receive 4 payments. One of those payments was for the prior year, and then 3 of those payments for this year. So there is a possibility that the state will make the final payment before August 31st, but there also is a possibility that they will not. Based on that, we are projected to end this year with an operating deficit of approximately $2.7 million. Depending on if we receive that final payment from the state or not, that deficit may be less. As a district, we continue to work with Forecast 5 to update our 5-year, long-year financial plan. And this tentative budget was built on that information that we use. So the information that you saw back in December as part of those financial projections, those assumptions, that information was used and has been updated as we've moved throughout the year. So just some additional information to talk about the operating budget. Actual revenues this year were about $1.3 million less than budgeted, or 1.86%. Actual expenditures were also less than budgeted by just over $2 million, or 2.65%. As you can see, though, by these numbers, we still ended the year with a deficit, and that's where that $2.7 million is. Our expenditures exceeded actual revenues. This is having an impact on the overall operating fund balance, so we will see an overall decrease of about 30.4% in fund balance.
Jackie, have we received all the IDEA funds?
I would need to check, but anytime we submit an expenditure report, like we expend that money and then we submit for, and they tend to be pretty quick on those payments. So federal payments tend to be faster than some of the states. Any other questions on that so far? Okay. There we go. Revenues, as you can see, most of the revenues that we did not receive came out of the education fund. We are expecting to see a possible 5th payment made this year to true up for everything expended from the state for this year. As far as expenses go, We did expend less than budgeted by just over $2.1 million. And as you can see, most of that amount underspent was in the education fund and then also in our operations and maintenance fund. The primary reason for that difference is in that operation and maintenance fund was we took off one of the projects, and so that was left. So we replaced that with the upcoming track project. Just to break it down a little bit further, where that money out of the ed fund and O&M are coming from, that $1.5 million, as you can see, is broken down. Approximately $250,000 of that was from salaries. The majority of it was actually in benefits. So just over $700,000 underspent there in benefits. As far as O&M, it came from purchase service, supplies and materials, and then also from some capital outlay projects. Any questions so far before I move into 24-25? Okay. Tonight the board is being asked to adopt a tentative operating budget of $78.1 million with a total tentative budget of $92.3 million for the 24-25 school year. The operating expenditure budget is approximately $2.6 million more than last year's, or a 3.5% increase. We do expect that operating revenues will be approximately $3.4 million more than last year, for a total of $74.2 million. We also expect that operating expenditures will be $4.6 million more than was spent in the current year, or a 6.1% increase. We anticipate that the education fund will have an approximate deficit of $829,000. The operations and maintenance fund will have an estimated deficit of $2.2 million, and the transportation fund has an estimated deficit of $1 million. We are expecting a total deficit for next year of $3.7 million. This is primarily due to increases in salaries, benefits that we're seeing, and capital expenditures. For this year, there is a 6.41% increase for our KEA staff, a 6% increase for non-speak and speak support staff, and a approximately 5% increase for administration. As far as revenues, our local tax levy is approximately $3.3 million more than the current year. For EBF, we do not anticipate receiving additional funds. That's been budgeted flat to last year. Since last year, we only received $61,000. Any increase there would be insubstantial to the overall budget. And so right now, it is budgeted as a 0% increase. So flat to last year at $7.3 million. And then we're also assuming that there'll be flat categorical payments for the state for the following year. So anything that we've received, in transportation reimbursements, those types of things, we anticipate to be flat. I do have on here that federal revenues are projected to decrease by approximately $1.3 million from the current year. That is mainly due to ESSER funding that is closing. That is something that the district has done a phenomenal job of planning for when it was first instituted. All of that money was used for non-recurring items. So non-recurring expenses, something that was one time, because we knew that that funding source was eventually going to end. So that, in terms of impact on the budget, it doesn't, because even though those revenues have decreased, so have those expenses. Those expenses are not there, so they are offset. Salaries. We do anticipate between all of the various groups that there will be about 1.7 more in this year's budgeted than last year's. We also saw an overall increase of about approximately 10 FTE, so that included approximately 5.5 certified and 4 support staff. We also have a benefits increase this year of about 5.8% for our insurance renewal. That equates to just over $730,000 for the district portion of it, more than that we have in the current year. Some other items, curriculum, we have budgeted in there $400,000 for the adoption of new materials. That is flat to the current year. And then also technology, we have budgeted $60,000, which is just a very slight increase from the 23-24 school year. This year, we did budget for the replacement of 5 one-year-old replacement buses, and some additional expenses with that in terms of cameras and things like that. So that is approximately $100,000 more of a cost to the district than it was in the current year. And then capital projects this year, we are anticipating a total of about $2.6 million to be spent, which is just over $280,000 less than was budgeted in the previous year. Any questions so far? No? I'll keep going. Just for a quick revenue summary, the district receives most of its funds from local sources. That makes up about 82%. Within that local source, 75% of it comes from local property taxes. This has been a very dependable source of income and revenue for the district. We have a very stable tax base here. What has changed a little bit is the percentage of state revenues and then also those federal revenues. So as the state funding and federal funding percentagely has gone down, it drives up the local funding, but it tends to be very stable within a percentage point or two across many years. So, and then just an expenditure summary. Approximately 50% of the district's operating expenditures are used for instruction, and then another 45% is used for that instructional support. So 95% of the district's expenditures is really going into either instruction or instructional support. The instructional support pieces is things like anything administrative, technical, logistical support, anything that sort of relates to enhancing that direct instruction. And then just a review of the operating funds. These are broken up into the education fund, the transportation fund, and then the O&M fund. Our education fund is far and away our largest fund that we use, and it's used for that instruction, salaries, benefits, tech. What goes in here are revenues from evidence-based funding that we receive from the state. Any of those categorical payments, things like that. This is also where we use some of those assumptions as far as budgeting, whether it's salary increases, increases in FTE, all of those. Transportation fund, that involves anything that relates to the transportation of students. So the cost of buses, the salaries and benefits for bus drivers, things like that. This is also where we would see revenue from that transportation claim. And so we are potentially waiting on that 5th payment here. And then O&M, our O&M fund makes up just over 11% of our total budget. And so it is quite significant. We do receive revenues from the tax levy in this fund. This is also where any of our life safety repairs projects money is spent out of. This is also where, for the upcoming year, we'll have that life safety electrical work, the replacement of the track will come out of here. And so that's really what is creating that deficit of approximately $2.2 million. What questions do we have? So I guess really quickly, I do want to say, just to reiterate that this is the tentative budget. Prior to adopting or presenting the final budget, we will be working to see what we can do to reduce that deficit. It's one of the primary goals for all of us throughout the summer.
I think that's my biggest concern slash priority, is seeing where we can cut anywhere that will, without sacrificing, the quality of education, seeing where we can trim and reduce that. That's a kind of a scary number, 30%, right?
Reduction in fund balance.
Yeah.
The district has traditionally run very tight, so if money was received, it is spent that year. Obviously, as increases happen, projects, facility needs, all of these different things happen, the expenses outweigh the revenue that's coming in. And so currently, we do have a structural deficit, and that will be something that we need to address. So,
Does Forecast 5 give you any information regarding the increases, the, I guess, projected increases to EVA and therefore the revenue that would come in?
yes.
I mean, does it give any insight?
So you can enter in any assumption. So we could put in what does it look like if there's $20 million in new construction or new building, or what is it going to look like if there's $50 million? And it does forecast out those different scenarios. We just have to tell it sort of what is our best guess, what is our best estimate on what those things look like. So the good news is a positive. We have a 5-year contract with the KEA. Everything in there is known. Those are no longer assumptions, those are known. So we can put those into 5-year projections, and have a much more accurate outlook in 5 years than we did last year, right? Because all of those things are known. So the more knowns we have, the easier it is to input that data and use it to make future decisions.
Do we have any surplus in collection with the county treasurer like we did last year?
There was some, yes.
I know we moved it. Do we have any opportunity to move it again?
You're talking about
Working cash.
in the debt service
Debt
fund.
service
Yeah, it hasn't grown that much.
hasn't grown that much.
No.
No,
Check
that
under the couch cushions?
so true.
Right. We do have about $2 million in working cash, but again, that's in our fund balance currently, and that's one-time money. That's sort of our piggy bank at this point, for those emergencies or for those sort of rainy day, situations. I think the bigger sort of looming question is, how do we fix the structural deficit?
And that TIF is not going to help us with that. I mean, the EAV is going to be frozen
For that area.
for that area
Yep.
with demand, depending on how they handle it, the demand upon us, depending on what they do, increasing. Yeah. Thanks, Sugar Grove.
Any other questions? I know it's a lot of information.
Yeah, so the 3.5, it was year-over-year budget increase, correct? Which is primarily driven by the increases for speak and non-speak, and then the new teachers contract. That accounts for about half of that 3.5%, right? And then a good chunk of that after that is capital spend.
Correct.
For new projects. Of the increases, I mean, is some of this stuff inflationary too, just based on the economy as it is? And if so, like what percentage of that 3.5% would be based solely on that?
I would have to look at that, but we see higher costs across the board, right? Whether it's supplies, materials, even just purchase services, everyone's costs have go up. We see it personally, and we also feel it as a district, but I would need to get some more information for you to be able to say this percentage of those increases is specifically tied to inflation.
Because I know some of the stuff we have, we're contracted and locked in for X number of years, if it's fuel costs or if it's the copier program or some of these things. But I know there's some things outside of that we're just like everybody else who has to just deal with it and pay for it because that's what it costs right now. So I wasn't sure what percentage of that increase comes from that. versus some of the other increases that we worked out with contracts in the last couple of years.
Any other questions? So at this point, we're just adopting the tentative budget, so nothing official. This is just what you presented, and then we're going to review
Correct.
later, given the calendar, and it'll be the actual budget.
Yes.
So,
In September.
that being said, at this time, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the, thank you, Dr. Book.
Sure.
And I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the 2024-2025 tentative budget as presented.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. The tentative budget for Kaneland CUSD 302 is approved. Second item of new business is the approval of the Fox Valley Career Center 2024-2025 budget. Dr. Bogan sat down too fast.
Thank you. I wanted to share information regarding the Fox Valley Career Center 24-25 budget. The Fox Valley Career Center Board met on May 1st, 2024, and approved the tentative budget for FY25 as presented by Dr. Burchell. The Kaneland Board of Education serves as the administrative agent for the Fox Valley Career Center, and so the board is required to adopt the tentative and the final budget each year. The Fox Valley Career Center budget goes through much the same process that the Kaneland budget does. It follows a similar timeline, similar processes in place. The difference here is that this board is the administrative agent. The Fox Valley Career Center has its own board, which is comprised of the superintendents from all of its member districts. They approve revenues and expenditures within the budget each year. So as I said, their group did meet May 1st and approve this tentative budget. Some of the highlights from for the upcoming year is that the Fox Valley Career Center budget is balanced. Revenues slightly exceed revenues by $42.08. They are looking at an overall increase from the prior year's budget of approximately 5%. That's really coming from a couple of places. The overall increase, just to put it into perspective, their total budget is just under $2.5 million. So the increase from last year to this year's budget on both sides is just over $132,380. Their primary source of revenue comes from two spaces. One is tuition, which makes up approximately 86% of where they receive their revenue, and then the other 14% comes through grant funding, mostly the Career and Technical and also the Perkins grant. On the expenditure side, couple things to note here. Their increases for staff are the same as Kaneland's, so 6.41% for KEA, 6% for speak and non-speak support staff, 5% for administrative, and then they also have 2 support staff members who are retiring and so are receiving those retirement contracts with a 6% increase. They also have the same health insurance benefit increase, so that 5.8%. And then they also are looking at about a 5% increase for supplies. Really that's due to just the increased cost of materials and things, and also some increased enrollment. So with increased enrollment, they need more things to teach those classes for those students. So a little bit more of a cost there. But overall, they have a $2.5 million budget. It is balanced, revenues slightly exceeding revenues by that 4208. So great job. But any questions on that?
No? Okay. Hearing nothing further, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the 2024-2025 Fox Valley Career Center tentative budget as presented.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. The tentative budget for the Fox Valley Career Center is approved. Next up, we have the approval of the farm lease renewals. Dr. Bogan.
Yes. We have 3 farm leases that are up for renewal this year. Generally, these are done in 3-year increments, and so we have 3. One is the KHS FFA Club, the Future Farmers of America, the Kuiper Brothers Farm, and then also the Cessna Farm in Maple Park. Typically, and in years past, the district does not charge the KHS FFA Club for use of their property, and so that's what we are recommending this evening. Also, the Cessna property in Maple Park, it's in a pretty unique location. It's a small 15-acre that's sort of right in the middle of town, and so because of that, that land has typically been rented at a much lower rate than we see across the state of Illinois or even in DeKalb or Kane County. And so that rent has been fairly stable at $150 per acre. And then the Kuiper Brothers, that property has also been long-time renting, but we look at the Illinois study for fair market value for rentals across the state. And so that property has been rented over the last 3 years for $225 per acre, and we are recommending an increase to $235 per acre to put it more in line with fair market values. Are there any questions about our farm leases?
So in the tentative budget, it said something about land cash. Is this, we're talking about land, no? Is that
No.
something?
Something different.
Okay.
This would be found in the operations and maintenance budget under rentals
Okay.
revenue.
So we own this property, what are we holding on to it for? Potential for the future, expansion,
Yep, any one of those things.
or if it becomes valuable enough to sell to actually make some money back to lower our deficit or something like that as a potential.
Investment.
It wouldn't lower the deficit, it would on a one-time basis, but this is a structural operating deficit that needs to be addressed through recurring expenses.
I completely understood, but I mean,
Yeah.
in a pinch, if this land becomes valuable enough and we need some extra,
Chances are good you're probably not going to sell the FFA one because it's physically attached to the Kaneland High School
Yeah, absolutely.
land. The one in Maple Park, that's being reserved for if Maple Park continues its growth pattern and we needed to open an elementary school there. And then the other acreage here is physically adjacent to the south portion of Harder Middle School. And again, if you sell it, we would need to be sure that whatever they use it for is appropriate next to a school.
absolutely.
So,
No, I'm
some
just
things to-
thinking,
Yep, some
we're
things
just
to
talking about
consider.
$2.8 million deficit, so
Yep.
Yep, makes sense.
just asking questions.
Is there any opportunity to look at the Cessna property in terms of even a slight increase as opposed to just leaving it flat? I know it's not a lot of money, but, you know, everything's going up everywhere. And
Yeah.
I get that they rent at a lower rate, but to keep it the same, to me, seems not in line with what we're seeing, you know,
Yeah.
elsewhere.
Yeah, we could definitely look at an increase there as well. I think the idea in not raising it was that that property has been rented pretty stably from a historical perspective, and also just like the location of it, is it valuable? Is it a value? Like, does that increase? Is it in line? Would there be not other interests, but how, yes, how interested are people in that,
Sure.
in that property, so.
That's the risk of raising it, right? That we lose the tenant and then
Well,
it's
and
not
that's,
rent anyway.
we're happy as a district to have that tenant, and to have that land rented. So that was some of the rationale behind that, behind this recommendation.
Sure.
Dr. Fuchs, in the table, and Jack, you may not know from the historical perspective, but the 3-year contract or 1-year contracts that we've had in the past, is there a preference, or what is the preference for a 3-year? For stability, more for us or for the people that are farming the land?
For both.
For both,
It's
okay.
been working very well. And those 1 years that you see were renewed every year. And then on the 3rd year, we would bring them back. It was just recent that we decided to go ahead and write them as 3 years so that the board didn't have to address them every year, because things weren't changing too much at the time. So it made sense.
Thank you.
I guess raising it by $5 an acre on a 15-acre property is $75.
That's,
All right.
anything else?
Any other questions? No?
And then, if you'd like to raise it on any of these, if you could just do that in the motion, and then we don't have to bring this back.
Well, do we want to discuss? Does anyone want to consider it, or are we? I think the impact seems minimal, given, you know,
I mean,
it's
it's
it's not like it's going to save us.
Trying to gouge farmers.
Okay, with hearing no recommendation from the board to change it, I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education directs the administration to approve the 3-year farm lease renewals for the 2024, 2020 through 2027 for the Bradley Cessna for the property in Maple Park at an annual cash rent of $150 per acre, and the Kaneland High School FFA property with no cash rent, and the Kiefer Brothers Farm LLC for the farm properties at Carter Middle School at an annual cash rent of $235 per acre.
So moved. Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 6-0. The farm lease renewals have been approved. Moving right along to the 4th item of new business, the summary of student learning 2023-2024. Dr. Layden.
Yes, thank you. As we try to balance, one of the things that you'll see as I share an update here tonight, we have shared our academic performance. We shared a couple different ways. Number one, in October, we do the SIP goals, which you'll see in here the update on how those went from each of the buildings, because we did shift to going back to a building goal. The other thing, in December, we typically have the school report card and the indicators of success. So that is where we dig into more of the raw data. So tonight, you'll see we've shifted it to try to have it more of a higher level, more by building, by grade span, as opposed to the data sets from each grade span, because we've done that before, and that ended up being an hours-long presentation. But please know that we do have all of the data sets behind this information, so if at some point you'd like the information by building, by grade span, by cohort group, we have all of that to share, just trying to figure out a balance in which to share it, be respectful of time, and also give the updates in real time as the school year ends. So know that this isn't the only time that you're going to hear this information or see it. October, there will be new SIP goals in the buildings, and then December or January, typically we do the indicators of success on the school report card. So with that, feedback when we're done, or feedback at a later time, would be important, just to see how it goes tonight with a slightly different format and trying to make it a little more streamlined. Dr. Mumm.
Perfect, great. That kind of touches our first slide. We're just going to talk a little bit about how we use the data. Mr. Raleigh and I are here to first look at our executive summaries of all the data, and then we'd like to thank the school administrators for coming tonight, and they're going to share just their school improvement end goals for this year, and maybe just a quick projection of where they may land. in the SIP Bowl for next year. So we're excited to celebrate a little bit as well as look at some of our areas of next steps. As Dr. Layden said, we do use data quite a bit all year long. This is a very high level executive summary. We do break it down in the Ed Service office by cohort, by students, by teacher sections, as well as school comparisons. We also work with our collaborative inquiry team, which is a team of teachers from across the district. This year they were K-12 in the fall and then K-5 in the spring, really looking at what trends do you see as an educator and what professional development should we glean from each other and the experiences that you're seeing in one classroom compared to another classroom or teacher to teacher. We also work with the NIU Wright Lab to really look at what should district benchmarks be based on the creation of an assessment, what percent of students should be meeting or exceeding that benchmark within any given test when we're writing an assessment internally. And that's kind of a progressive based on research. You want to see about 80-85% always meeting your benchmark, but when you are drafting a new assessment, you start at 70, then go to 75, and then you get up to 80 by that third year of validating that test. So you'll see some of our benchmarks are set as a district in a variety of different numbers. Some of it is based on the tool that we use. Sometimes we have some outdated text and haven't found newer text, and so therefore the district benchmark is lower because there's some bias in the language of the books that we read. Or you will see, like in the math assessment, our district benchmark is set because we're in the process of validating that test. We're in the second year of a third year of drafting the test based off of the state framework. Both Mr. Raleigh and I are sharing a little bit of internal assessments, like our locally written math assessment, and then we have external assessments such as our Rigby reading test, our books produced by a company, but we internally give and administer that test with running records, so it's a little bit blend of both. And then you will see iReady, which we have talked many times about. That really is a type 1 assessment. It's a state assessment, a state national assessment. It's by a company that's given to us and then scored automatically through their system. So it's not scored internally. We administer it on the computer. And so we have a variety of data to compare both internally as well as externally. So overall, let me start with the K-5 benchmarks, and we'll start with reading and just different data points. We have gotten our first IAR projected data. It is not final data, that's why you don't see the final projections here, but it did give us a hint of kind of where we're going to project to when they affirm the data here next month. Currently for IAR, we are projecting to be at state level in most of the sections, 3rd through 5th grade. And so that was a great celebration to see. Moving up to iReady, we have out of our 19 sections, 18 are at or above state level. And again, that section is just not by teacher section, but we count them by Blackberry first grade compared to Shields first grade compared to McDowell and all the other school by first grade. The whole grade span together is what we characterize as a section. The nice thing about iReady, which you'll see in the celebrations as well, in reading and math, we are above pre-COVID scores for our district and for where we compared to the state and nation. So I know that question came up in the past, not only how are we doing progressing year to year, but how are we doing compared to pre-COVID? And this is the first year that all sections in iReady at the elementary level scored higher than we did the year before COVID occurred. So that was a great celebration. Some of our internal district benchmark, we want to get to that 75% on the Rigby reading assessment. Again, that's a leveled book by Fontes and Pinnell leveling, and we do the running record and ask the comprehension questions. We have identified some of those comprehension questions are a bit older, and we would like to start to update them, but that would take a validity process of 3 years as well. But that is something that we'd like to embark on because some of the language, I think one of the books has the word telephone in it, and it shows the phone with a cord, and none of the kids know what that is. And so that comprehension question is very difficult for our students, and so we would like to make some edits. We have reached out to see if there are new books by the Rigby assessment, and they do not have those currently. 15 out of the 27 sections met our district benchmark of being at 75%. If you go back and kind of look at the bias of a couple of those questions, there's 2 levels that they typically top out at, and a large percent of our students topped at those 2 levels. And so I do feel the language issue can be a little bit of a discrepancy pulling down that data a bit. In math, our district benchmark is 75%. Again, this is the 2nd year of revising a local assessment test based off of the Illinois State Framework and the Common Core standards with the 8 mathematical practices embedded. It is a test that is written internally and vetted internally, and then looked at through the NIU department to validate our question sets. But again, it takes the 3 years to really make sure it's a validated test. While the test questions were great, this year it took approximately 4 to 5 hours for a student to complete the test. That's over a course of 4 days. Knowing that is way too long for an assessment test, that is going to be revised down to 1.5 hours to 2 hours, 2 test periods. So I think you'll see quite a difference in the assessment data from this year to next year with that revision of kind of weaning it down. We wanted to try to capture a couple questions on every standard, and in doing that, we created a test that was way too comprehensive for the students. We're taking the comprehensive questions and putting them in a question bank that teachers can use on the spot for exit slips, so we're not losing really stellar questions, but making sure that post-test and pre-test are much smaller. iReady, as I said, we have returned just about on all sections to pre-COVID, above pre-COVID data, and above state and national data in 19 out of the 19 sections. There was one section that quite isn't back to pre-COVID data in the math area, and that was at the primary grades in 2nd grade. The IRA benchmark for elementary is right at the state level, or projected to be. Again, that will come out formally in July, and as Dr. Layden said, we do bring that back as part of our presentations with the indicators of success and school report card. Writing overall is just a narrative score, and so the interesting part about this data is we do use the Lucy Calkins writing rubric, which is nationally used in quite a few districts, but it is more of a continuum district, or a continuum rubric, I apologize, and not really like the student must be here. So finding a district benchmark is really difficult. And so we've worked with a writing consultant as well as NIU to kind of figure on this continuum of writing progression approximately where students should be within the different categories of structure, development, and conventions. The difficult part about this being a narrative assessment is, especially in the conventions, you must have dialogue and you must have the quotations appropriately used, which we realize is something that in the conventions considerably marked down our students on that rubric, and an area that then we want to bring back into more intensive explicit instruction of dialogue. And so that was one area that really brought down some of those sections.
Dr. Mum, can you take a second
Yeah.
to tell us a little bit more about what conventions mean? Some of those terms that aren't at the EC5 level.
Yep, for sure. Conventions really focuses on, are you using capitalization, spacing, some phrasing, some transitional words, as well as the appropriate exclamation point, period, comma, and dialogue quotations. And so it's really the grammatical pieces of your writing. And with narrative explicitly, putting in commas and quotations through dialogue is a requirement as early as end of 1st grade into 2nd grade, which is a little bit earlier on that rubric than we teach it currently. And a little bit earlier on the rubric than even the state standards recommends teaching it. So it's a conversation for us to decide for narrative. Development is really looking at author's choice, words, purpose, how you can be descriptive in your language for writing. And we have seen, especially as you'll see some of the SIP goals from the principals, a big focus on development and a big increase in the ability of really enhancing that written word and that written structure, or written development. And then finally, structure is the ability to have kind of the flow of a writing process, the transitions, how do we paragraph, how do you find that detail and wrap around kind of the opening, middle, and end is in the structure part. While our sections look a little bit lower again on that continuum rubric, writing is by far the area that we want to have the most improvement and need the most improvement, and have some solid plans to really focus on that. We do have some successes when you look at the cohorts of students making gains. You go from about 8 out of 27 sections closer to 11 to 15, where the cohort of students is making gains from last year to this year. But when you look how many met our district benchmark, we still are in the single digits for most of those 3 areas. That is the higher level executive summary. And I am just messing. Are you doing it too? I'm like, why does it just keep going? All right, we'll work on that. So I've touched on some of the celebrations and areas for next step, and you guys have had this for a little bit as well. In K-5 reading, like I mentioned, we really want to look at the bias of some of the language and comprehension questions. We were very excited to see some solid increases in 5th grade reading, especially on the IAR. The projected data shows a nice projection and increase, especially at that KPAS, the end of KPAS into 5th grade. We are seeing the scores within sections that are doing balanced literacy, which is guided reading, shared reading, independent reading. When they are following that structure of learning, we are seeing higher scores in those sections of classrooms where balanced literacy has really been implemented with fidelity. So we want to make sure that we're holding the accountability on the delivery of that balanced literacy. We have identified with our MTSS coordinators all the specific classroom sections that are 60% or below, and really investigating with instructional coach support what is needed in that classroom, as well as learning walks to make sure that that balanced literacy structure is in there. Balanced literacy and guided reading are required kindergarten all the way into 5th grade. We don't transition into just reading novels or literature circles. We really want to continue to focus on that balanced literacy through their elementary career. We have had in January, the Illinois State came out with a comprehensive literacy plan with their recommendations of what to do and what not to do to see good gains. And we have already developed a committee of, I think, about 20-25 staff, K-12, that will really be investigating that state plan. I know the state plan came out in a draft in January and will be finalized this summer. And our team will start in September, jumping in and analyzing the recommended structures from the state and what happens in our current classrooms. So those are a couple of the things that we're looking at in reading. All right, in writing, I kind of discussed, now I'm like, why isn't it going? Just can't get it together tonight. In writing, I kind of discussed that it was just narrative and some of the issues that we had, especially in the conventions area. We did just fully adopt a word study assessment and program. And so next year will be our first year with a intricate word study assessment solely that will give us some information on the way that students construct words, break words down, and then hopefully apply them into writing. So I think that additional piece of the word study curriculum that you approved a year ago and the assessments that are coming up starting next year will really give us better insight on that. One of the things we are switching in writing as well, instead of just collecting one genre, narrative was last year, and then it doesn't circle around for another 3 years, although we teach all 3 genres every year, we've only been collecting assessment data on one genre formally as a district in that rotation, and so we are collecting assessment data starting next year on all 3 genres of writing, so we can have that year to year to year, which will give us a better perspective of immediate growth or immediate areas to really investigate. We did have our writing consultant do fidelity checks for how we're doing Writers Workshop, and that came out with 5 distinct recommendations of how to set up sharing of lessons, our mini lessons, and then a big one was feedback, which you will see is a district goal next year of how are we using feedback, not just to tell a learner, but how to co-construct that feedback so the learner really understands what we are sharing, especially within the Writers Workshop conferences. So I think that feedback focus next year will be very powerful for our writing. As I mentioned, it is definitely our area that we want to put as much time, effort, and professional development in, and you'll see that in many of the SIP goals. They had that this year, and many plan to continue that as well. With our writing consultant, she did have many classrooms that were true exemplary structures to model writing workshop for other staff, and so we're creating some lab classes that staff that want to see Writers Workshop in action. They don't need to leave to go to a different district. They don't have to go to professional development elsewhere. They can just go right up or down Route 47 and be able to see that with our own Kaneland students. So I think that lab classroom coming back will be very successful as well. All right, so then math. The executive summary, I again shared some of those. We saw some very strong, even though our test was very long this year locally, our primary grades really had a solid foundation for a lot of math concepts. And so we're excited about the progress that we saw in the primary grades, knowing that they are having the foundation of mathematical understanding, terms, the computation, and I think filtering that on up as we continue the progression with our math continuum will be very helpful for us as well. We saw some schools that had distinct success that we again also want to look at a math lab classroom to see what types of structures do you have. Do you have guided math? Do you have continuum math with feedback practices? What is showing some success and how can we build and share that across all of the schools? We were, again, excited, I can't say it enough, to be back to some pre-COVID and exceeded some pre-COVID data, both on the IAR as well as iReady. And so that was a success because that's always been something on our discussions for sure. Math is the one tool that has the most flexibility of supported tools that staff can use. We give them an option of multiple programs, and we've realized we want to hone that in through the math curriculum review cycle next year. So Mr. Raleigh and I went through and revised the curriculum review cycle that we shared with you when we came in April. Math was going to be in 2028, and we felt that it really needed to be pushed up a bit so that we could have more up-to-date materials to support the curriculum. They start that curriculum review with a first look and revision of their proficiency tables, scope and sequence, and then look at tools to best support the way we want to teach math. And so I think we have 31 staff, so we'll see how subbing goes with that. I'm sure Dr. Atkins will have tons of subs for me, and that'll work out, and all 31 staff can be there to review it. Or we'll have to make some decisions of how we can review that effectively with all the stakeholders. Thank you. And then finally, the other K-5 data that I wanted to celebrate. You have heard about our personalized learning academies for staff. We are on 3.0. 3.0 asks staff to take the 10 tenets of personalized learning and show evidence from their classroom on every single tenet to make sure that that structure is present in their classroom. And we had 99% of all K-5 staff turn in evidence for all 10 tenets, which is a huge celebration. And as much as I know that was hard work for the staff, it is amazing to see that evidence. I encourage you to stop by KMAC, and we have a whole wall of samples of evidence from how do we engage in feedback, how do students have choice, where is growth mindset. And so we were thrilled to see that much evidence come in, and really meaningful, powerful evidence. So we know that personalized learning is happening in all of our classrooms across the district. Our LRC staff also had the highest reading engagement in the challenge for reading passport challenges than we have had since pre-COVID. And if you remember, we do have new LRC staff now compared to pre-COVID, and the assistants have done a phenomenal job with that passport. So I just wanted to share that for sure. We are continuing as Ed Service. We've already mapped out our learning walk days and topics around this data. That's one crucial piece that we use it for. What do we need to see in practice? And so when the directors go out into the buildings, we have a focus of what we are looking for. Today, are we looking for guided reading or feedback, or how we embed Writers Workshop? And so we're excited to continue the learning walks and seeing it in practice to really help us guide those next steps in professional development. Questions for K-5? I know it's an executive summary, but it still seems like a lot. To me, it seems really, really minor because this is what I live and breathe, but to you, I'm sure it's a lot.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Right, we will transition to our 6th through 8 data and our high school data, taking a look at some of those, again, very similar benchmarks. Some of those tests that Dr. Bum talked about phase out after 5th grade, so we've looked at 2 key pieces. Number one, we looked at our iReady scores. We test iReady through 8th grade, and then our IAR as well. Those are two, again, reiterating some information, standardized tests that we can look at with IAR. We can compare ourselves to other schools across the state as well with iReady. So taking a look at those, something I want to clarify, because we don't use the term often and we haven't presented on it often, but when we look at sections, we are now able to look at two different middle schools. So when you see 6 sections, that is a section of 6th grade at Harder and a section of 6th grade at the academy, the Personalized Learning Academy. Same thing with 7th and same thing with 8th. So we have 2 cohorts at each school when we are able to compare those. When we look at those benchmarks and some of those celebrations, we are seeing, again, some significant improvements. We're looking at 5 of the 6 of our cohorts in reading that are above the national level, and then about 2/3 of those that are above the state level. Similar numbers, you'll see those for math. It's interesting when you start to dig into the data a little bit, some of those cohorts are a little bit of a disadvantage because we do compare sheer numbers, and when you get to the academy and we're looking at smaller cohorts, those numbers are a little bit smaller. So sometimes we have class sizes of one section that's upwards of 275 and another one that's tipping the scales at right around 11 or 12. So we can look at those, we can pull some data, we can do some question analysis from those tests, which are really nice. The other piece with those is that they're adaptive, meaning if I'm scoring and answering questions correctly, they will start to introduce questions of a higher level at grade levels that are above. So if I'm taking this as a 6th grader and I'm answering correctly, I'll start to get some test questions that are at the 7th and 8th grade level, and then the inverse works. If I'm struggling with some at the 6th grade level, I might be introducing some questions at the 5th grade, possibly the 4th grade.
Mr. Raleigh, how many times is iReady administered during the course of a school year?
Sure, it is administered 3 times. So we take it in the fall, we take it in the winter, and then we take it in the spring. The spring one is a little bit difficult when we talk about standardized testing and test exhaustion. It's right around the time. Those 2 windows are right around the time between iReady and IAR. So it's typically a March, April-ish window. Our testing coordinators, our MTSS coordinators will work across the district to try to coordinate those. And our kids do a great job with them. There's a lot of successes to celebrate. Again, with IAR, we take those initial scores, so we'll have some more comprehensive reports that come out here in the next month or so, and that is one of our indicators in the fall. But the initial reports of how we're trending, and when we break down into reading and math, some cohorts have made some really, really positive gains. We're looking at 10, 15 percentage points as a cohort when we look at 7th graders this year compared to how they scored last year as 6th graders. So some big celebrations in there. When we dive into that reading data, we look at roughly 40% when we're looking at our iReady scores. About 40% of our students improved at least 1 placement. So that's not to say that only 40% of our students grew. We do have a large band of scores at grade level, and students can fluctuate in there. So I might be proficient in 6th grade or at grade level in 6th grade. I might be at grade level in 7th grade, and that is our expectation. What this is telling us is that almost half of our students work their way out of one of those placement categories into the above category. So not looking at ones that have dropped back, but our kids are showing growth on that assessment as they take that. We look at one of our sections looking at 8th grade, we saw some very significant improvements. If you've ever been in a middle school around the time of March or April and asked a group of 8th graders who have already had course selection for their high school career to lock in and focus on a standardized test, it's a great challenge. And our 8th graders did a really good job this year and saw some really great improvement. Similar scores you'll see with the IAR. Some of those initial reports that we're getting when we look at that outgoing 8th grade cohort, so those 7th graders last year, we're looking at almost 15% increases in that meets and exceeds category, which is a big celebration. As we look to continue to improve on our reading scores, our reading practices, we want to make sure that we are focusing on the literacy strategies of informational text, the iReady test itself, and we will get them with IAR. They do a question analysis, and we have categories and areas that we can look to improve upon. And probably the biggest opportunity for us to grow is with that informational text piece, that nonfiction reading and answering questions, comprehension that goes along with that. We will continue to focus on our MTSS team. We've celebrated a lot of work that team has done over the last few years. We really want to make sure that as we go through different curriculum cycles and review cycles, any opportunity that we have to align our MTSS interventions with what is happening in the classroom, we want to take advantage of that. We want to make sure that kids are learning and they're being instructed in the same setting as their peers, so looking to really continue to grow that. Again, the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan impacts the middle school and high school as well. That information that came out, I would say probably the way that plan is trending for the middle school and some changes. There is an increased focus on speaking and listening. At our high school, one of our graduation requirements is our communication skills class. And you might see something similar come out of these recommendations for the middle school, but we'll wait and see what that looks like in the next few months. Want to continue to look at our iReady lesson pathway. So iReady is an incredibly comprehensive program, and you can a la carte different pieces of that. So we have the ability to take that benchmark in the fall, winter, and spring. We also have the opportunity to look at lesson pathways that are more of the day-to-day instruction. So we want to compare what those are to what we did. I believe it was 5 years ago, we reviewed our math, and we purchased a tool with that through what was Pearson at the time. So I want to compare those to the SAVIS is what was Pearson. So the SAVIS lessons and the SAVIS modules compared to what iReady has. And then that last piece there, we've done a lot of work already. We want to continue looking at ways that we can intervene and provide intervention for our students at the academy. And making sure that it's appropriate within the academy structure. There's a little bit of flexibility in multi-grade groupings with a 6 through 8 group. So I want to make sure that we're using the continuum that the students have to make sure that we can intervene and address those needs as they arise. Similar pieces for math when we look at, when we talked about 40% in reading, nearly 50% or nearly half of our students in that iReady assessment moved up out of a placement compared to the first iteration that was taken in the fall. And then when we look at that IAR score, we did see some significant growth in what were our 7th grade cohort this year. That will be our 8th grade cohort next year. So we're expecting to see some increases in those categories. When we look at areas for next step, we really want to hone in on that geometry and algebraic thinking strategies. Again, when we look at item analysis, that's identified as one of the biggest opportunities for our growth. We want to continue as we welcome in some new interventionists to make sure that they're on top of the tools that we use and they're taking advantage of the opportunity to be in our classrooms working with our students. I know we've shared in the past, but we have done a really, really good job here at Harder of connecting our intervention to our classroom curriculum, where students were taught, assessed using tool A in the past. If they needed an intervention, they were taken out of the classroom during an exploratory and they were put on a computer program that was not associated with even the publisher of a math tool. So what we've done is we've aligned those together. So when students are hearing vocabulary, terms, pictures, that curriculum has really been aligned. We want to make sure that we continue to look at that. And again, similar to reading, we want to make sure that if there's an opportunity to grow our lessons and our planning, that we can take advantage of those pieces. The last piece that we have is our report card grade. This is a little bit tricky this year because we were standards aligned and standards reported this year. So we did see improvement in our scores. That is a little bit anecdotal. It's a little bit mathematical on a conversion chart, but we've seen the number of students when we look at the number of 3s that students have gotten, meaning that they have met the grade level benchmarks, or the grade level proficiency benchmarks. We're seeing more and more students that are being successful at that level. And we're starting to see, when we envisioned the Personalized Learning Academy, one of the biggest what ifs that we had that was a struggle to share with our parents. We didn't have any previous data to say this structure in Kaneland has academic data to support it. We do have that now. We saw that from a social emotional standpoint at the beginning of the year, and we do see some of our IAR and our iReady scores that show that these students not only are getting their social and emotional needs met, but they're getting their academic needs met as well. When we start to look just in general with our middle schools, we want to make sure that we're finalizing some of those grading practices by content team. So that will be, I know that's going to be one of the things that teachers talk about within the first day or two of school. And then we want to make sure that we're communicating whatever those expectations are when we talk about grading practices and policies. We want to make sure as that team of 30-ish, we do have a number of middle school and high school teachers on the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. We share that out with our entire staff through our roadshow at the end of the year. So want to make sure that based on Illinois' recommendations that we are meeting best practices for literacy. And then a piece that we really want to look at for next year that will come in the form of our course handbook would be start the discussion. We've started initially looking at what would 4-credit courses look like here at the middle school. So right now students can take Algebra 1, they can take Geometry, they can take Spanish 1. Those are all high school courses. If I take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, I am eligible to go into Geometry during my freshman year. But I do not go to high school with a math credit, and I need 3 math credits. So we are looking at other districts that offer this. There are several of our comparable districts. Same thing for Spanish. We want to make sure, A, that teachers have the right accreditation to be able to do that, and then what impact would it have on staffing, on course selection moving forward. We want to make sure that we're setting kids up for success. So if they're taking a high-level geometry class in middle school and aren't as successful, what does that look like in terms of transcripts and GPA as they actually enter into the high school? So starting to flush a lot of those things out, and any of those recommendations would come through a course book selection or a course book presentation next year. Transitioning to 9 through 12, when we talk standardized tests, those are even fewer at the high school. So we start by looking at our grade point average. Mr. Rollman stole our thunder in talking about all the academic success that our students had and really looking at that GPA and the number of kids that are involved. I know that highlighted just athletics, but I would venture to say that we have a significant more number of students that are involved in some type of activities that are academically successful as well. So when we look at our GPAs, we do compare those to a rolling 6-year average, and we continue to see very slight movements, but overall, those GPAs are right in line with where our 6-year average is. So we break those out in bands from a 0 to a 0.9, a 1 to a 1.9, 2 to a 2.9, 3 to 3.9, and then 4.0 or higher. Currently in Kaneland, based on our policy, you can earn above a 4.0 by taking a weighted AP and advanced placement course. That content is built by the College Board. So that is a weighted grade. Similar to offering credit at our middle school. We have started the very initial conversations of what would it look like based on our homegrown courses of enhanced courses, similar to an honors course. Could we make those weighted as well? But we did see when we look overall the number of students, and we have this data broken down by all 4 grade levels at the high school. When we look overall at our students of roughly 1,250, 1,300, when we look at that 3.0. So if I earned all B's throughout my year, I would be at a 3.0. So that 3.0 or higher, that B level work or higher, we did see an overall increase in the number of students that were at that level. When we look at our seniors that are getting ready to enter either the workforce, college, the career, we saw the numbers that were earning less than a 2.0. So students that weren't as successful, we saw that number start to decrease, and that's what we want to see. We want to see the 3.0s and higher increase, and we want to see the 2.0s, the 1.0s, we want to see that decrease. I'm going to try not to steal Dr. Horn's thunder with our SIP goal, but we did see a significant increase and the number of freshmen on track. So when we look at those students that maybe were at risk in the way that our high school team was able to intervene, we have a very, very high number of freshmen that are on track to graduate. And it's a great success and a great celebration compared to where we have been in the past. Areas of moving forward, we want to continue to monitor that. We know we don't want kids to have to dig themselves out of a deep hole freshman year, so we will continue to build those support systems that are in place. We want to continue to grow our MTSS support here. I know Ms. Rothaker presented, I believe it was last meeting, on what MTSS looks like at the high school. So continuing to make sure that we are able to support our kids' needs as they come through the walk-in lab. We have physically moved some things along, so kids don't have an excuse if I have to walk all the way over here and then upstairs. It's a straight shot down the cafeteria when they're done eating, so we want to continue to build those supports. And then another key piece here, and this is important to know that this is required by the state. The contract for the SAT had expired, and the state takes that out to bid, and ACT bidded lower than SAT. So we will be required as a state standardized test as a district to offer the ACT for next year. So that is in its very initial phase. I think the contract for that was just settled a couple months ago. So we're looking at what that looks like. So we'll share some data with SAT, with PSAT, which is a great predictor of how our students are going to do. Some of that is going to shift. Some other pieces with that that aren't mentioned on here, our 11th grade takes the ISA, the Illinois Science Assessment, that is reported on the Illinois report card. That is no longer going to be offered as a standalone assessment, but science will be embedded into the ACT test along with a writing component. So that becomes a little bit more comprehensive. So we'll be working with the company and the high school administrative team to look at what that looks like. I'm hoping that someone that is far smarter than me in data can come up with some kind of comparable charts of if you were scoring at this percentage or this score on the SAT, it's the equivalent of this on the ACT, but that piece is yet to come.
Does the PSAT continue to be offered?
We have not had those conversations yet. I would like to see it just because it is a strong predictor for our kids, but it is.
It's also a national merit
Yep.
qualifier.
Yes. Yep.
It's the test that determines.
Yep, for sure. And we do use that data as a way to help identify some students and some needs. So
To that point, I know University of Iowa has mapped, they've done the research, both Iowa and as well as UW-Madison have, where they've mapped SAT and ACT, or actually PSAT to the ACT. It's, I think Missouri did it too, several, where states were going and doing the transition over, away from College Board, back to the ACT, but PSAT results mapped to ACT and what's likely to occur.
And I think that was initially crosswalked as we went to the SAT, so they did the same work.
Yeah,
Now they're just gonna undo it and go back the other way from SAT back to ACT.
Reverse the force.
And I believe it's a 3-year contract with ACT, for the state of Illinois.
Okay, good.
in 3 years, we can expect maybe to go back. So one of the few opportunities at the high school level that we have to look at a standardized test is just through that. It's through the SAT. So some real positive celebrations when we look mostly at our junior class. So 11th grade is a huge year for juniors to take this. We look at two pieces. Number one, there's a math test, and then it's a reading test, but it's a little bit more comprehensive, and you'll see it as the ERW. It's the evidence-based reading and writing component to that. And we look at essentially three different groupings. Number one, the number of Kaneland students that met or exceeded the benchmark on both of those tests. And then we have the either or, so we can look at math and we can look at the ERW, that evidence-based reading and writing. I know we don't want to do this, but a little bit of those data points, when we look at the number of students from Kaneland that met on both of those tests. We're roughly almost 7-8% higher than the state of Illinois. And of that test taken globally, we're roughly about 8 to 9% higher than where students, 11th graders, are scoring globally. That breakdown for reading, we're roughly 61% of our Kaneland students are meeting or exceeding that number, and that number is roughly 51 to 53 when you look at the state of Illinois and compare that globally. And then for math, we're roughly 6 to 8 percentage points higher. So for all three of those categories, our Kaneland students are scoring well above the state norm, and it's kind of cool to say the global norm. We also are able to look at that PSAT. That's the preliminary test, and it's a predictor of how students will do on that SAT. And when we looked at this year's freshmen, so next year's sophomores, when we look at both students that are scoring at or above or meeting or exceeding on both of those test scores, our freshmen are significantly higher compared to the state and globally as well. What we want to do in areas for next steps that we want to monitor is when we look at our 10th grade, so our incoming junior class, there was some opportunity to increase those numbers that are meeting on both of those. And we have until the springtime to do that for a standardized test. I know we just said we're moving away from the SATs, but nonetheless, we want to make sure that we're supporting them for a pretty important test when they're talking about their future. With that, we want to investigate opportunity, as I know we've talked about it as a board, and looking at some of those programs that help prepare those students. So some of that ACT test prep courses, tutoring, interventions or opportunities beyond their regular coursework at the high school. And then we want to make sure that we are supporting our building as we look at that transition with that contract with the ACTs. Sadly to report, we do not have AP data. That has not been issued back to us yet, so that information is coming. It is one of our indicators of success in the fall. How that is broken down is you'll see the number of students that took an AP course. You'll see the number of students that took an AP test and the number of students that scored a 3 or higher. Once a student scores a 3, that opens them up to the opportunity, depending on the college or university that they want to go to. That opens them up for some college credit. We will also start to accumulate some data on whatever that may look like for some of our dual credit offerings that we have, and it is likely that there might be some more opportunities in the future to add some further dual credit courses at our high school as well.
And if you recall, the school report card usually comes out right around Halloween each year, so we'll have that information into the fall, and then all of the indicators of success that we have that tracks this data are updated in real time on the website as well. So a lot of these data points that were discussed that we're waiting on the data can be found on the website.
All right, we are going to transition into looking at our SIP goals, our school improvement goals, and we had a different structure this year than we have, I think it's been 4 years. School improvement goals serve multiple purposes. Number one, we want to make sure that we are finding targeted areas, so we do bring together teams of teachers and our building administrators to look at opportunities to continue to grow within our school. So just from a professional development and a professional learning standpoint, they're an important goal to focus and set for our schools. The other piece in where they are mandated, we do, from a teacher evaluation standpoint, we do need to be able to have 2 different data points for student growth. So our SIP goals are used, or the teachers have the opportunity, I should say, to use our SIP goals. There is some other opportunities where they can kind of co-create some goals, but I'd say the vast majority of our staff will utilize our SIP goals to show student growth. So in the past years, we have had 2 district goals. So we've worked through our strategic plan, through our administrative teams, through our building teams to build 2 district goals. what we did this past year, and we presented what our projected goals were. I believe it's back in October. God bless you. We had a district goal, and then each building had their individual building goal. So we had a district level and again a building level goal. So we want to take a look at those. I'm going to have the opportunity to talk from an ed service standpoint of our district goal. And then we will invite our building administrative teams up one by one just to give, again, kind of that executive summary overview of what their goal was and how it progressed throughout the year. And when we look at our district goal, our common goal, this is looked at, it's written, it's rewritten, it's evaluated by our full administrative team. And this year's was based on the 5 commitments of our strategic plan and really assessed through a pre and post student reflection survey. Again, that's an important piece because we need to focus on student growth, and we have some leeway in to write those. So we wrote this from a student understanding of the impact that the 5 commitments have on their day-to-day learning. So some data shared out here. We started collecting this if we go back to the fall of 22 and have monitored those pieces throughout. If you look at that far column, this was the most updated survey results. Again, we looked for that 85% attainment rate or final mark. That tells us once a student, and research tells us once a student hits that or a group of students hits that 85%, that it's no longer just kind of a result of the survey. It is really shows an embedded practice amongst our students. So if you look at those range from 85% with our standards-based grading practices, upwards of 90, close to 94% with our one-to-one. Our one-to-one, our strategic plan commitment has shifted over the last couple of years to really reflect how students are utilizing technology from a learning standpoint. When this was originally written, and you see that February 23, that benchmark of 41%, the wording talked about students memorizing an acronym, which is SAMR, and that talks about technology implementation. And we brought together our Kaneland Connect strategic team. We brought together some various other groups and talked about what's important, that students memorize an acronym or that they can tell you how technology supports their learning. And the latter, of course, was more important. So we did shift that action step to be more of how their learning shifts. And then we continue to build some of the understanding of our students. And you see that one shoot up to about 94%. So some great celebrations there. That does come out as distinguished. Again, that's a whole other discussion on some of that summative ranking piece. But all 5 of our commitments at this point are above that 85% threshold. As we continue to look through our strategic plan, we will continue to monitor these. This is all student focused. The plan itself now is shifting towards our community understanding and building up that capacity with all of our stakeholders. So that will be some areas that we'll continue to monitor in the future. Any questions on the district SIP goal summary? All right, I am going to invite Mr. Brian Zerfus up to discuss a little bit about McDowell.
All right, so specifically for McDowell's SIP plan, we did focus on writing, most specifically development within writing. And within this, we emphasize the development portion of non-danger zone students. So at the beginning of the year, our students took an assessment, and we were able to identify students within the danger zone, so at a lower score compared to those students at a non-danger zone score. And our goal focused around how we emphasize the support for those students not within the danger zone, with our goal focused around a 35% growth increase. As you can see within the first 2 columns, we have our midpoint checks that averaged about 29%, and then our endpoint check that averaged about 33%. So we did come close. Wasn't necessarily where we wanted to see that growth, but we had great first steps and really built some great foundational pieces that we applied for this year that we're looking forward to continuing next year. Specifically, some of the work we did in changing schedules to maximize a 60-minute full block of writing, professional development at the building level to support grade level teams in what they were doing with writing, as well as grade level KDAB goals that were centered around specific grade level team needs to help support them in that piece. One of the things that we're really excited about, if you take a look at the overall growth, including all students, so danger zone and non-danger zone students, you see a much more significant increase that comes up to that 35% with an overall average of 37%. So we're definitely on the right track. Some of the next steps we've already taken in April at one of our SIP days, we actually took our entire SIP plan and tore it completely apart, had different, each part of our SIP plan was on different posters to allow grade level teams to go around and add strengths, areas for improvement, and have conversations around the next steps that we've already begun working with our SIP team on to have those organic conversations of where do we take our writing SIP goal in year 2 to maximize the learning and growth we had in year 1 into year 2, and I'm very excited to see that continue to grow and prosper as we continue a very similar SIP goal focused on writing into this upcoming school year. Questions about McDowell? All right, up next is John Shields.
Hi. This past school year, our SIP goal at John Shields centered around reading, with the goal specifically to be to increase the percentage of students reading at grade level and above grade level by 9% or higher in each grade level. As you can see from the slides, there's a lot of green on there, and it's a celebration. We did receive a distinguished or an excellent rating on our goal, so really proud of the hard work that our students, staff, and families put into the goal this year. I do want to note that there's one grade level that's not highlighted in green. It was already previously mentioned for the purpose of evaluation. The SIP goal was measured at the end of, from the beginning of the year to the end of February. Throughout trimester 3, we did continue with our action plan of our goal, as well as to progress monitor where we were at. And that grade level that's not in green did make progress throughout that trimester 3. So there was an increase from the beginning to the end of the year. For next year, we're excited to continue to focus on reading. We've already done some data deep dives looking at, what were the successes that we had this year and how can we continue to build on it. I know previously mentioned too was continuing at the elementary level, improving writing scores as well. So some of our action items tie taking that reading response and putting it into writing as well to continue to work on both of those content areas. Any questions for John Shields?
This is excellent to see. I do have one question on the 5th grade class. Obviously, it's a pretty significant drop-off, and then they kind of brought it back by the end of the year. Is there something specific that was going on in February with the 5th grade class, or is it like, hey, I know I'm about to go into 6th grade, I don't really care about this stuff right now, or something
That's
like that?
what we continued to talk about as a team. We did see with that grade level throughout certain parts of the years, it did ebb and flow, but the benchmark continues to grow also throughout the year. So that'll be part of our next steps as we continue this goal for next year of really what is it about that time of the year and how can we put in some action steps to really make sure that we're seeing, that growth, that continuous growth next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they started off strong at 57%, and then just tailspin right there. So, I just wasn't sure if there was something specific you guys kind of identified as, like, we knew this was kind of going on with the 5th graders at that point, or if it was just one of those days.
I think Dr. Mum also mentioned earlier we're continuing to look at the assessments and how we're collecting that data. Some of those assessments, like the content areas were, not the content area, some of the questions with the telephones, a little bit outdated. So continuing to look at the resources that we're using too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. John Stewart next.
Hi everyone, so really excited to share the progress and goal at Stewart, where we did receive a distinguished rating based on our goal of growing by 30% to on or above grade level in narrative writing in the area of development. What was powerful about this is, kudos to my staff and the students. We all worked on this together. We really looked at data at the beginning of the year, like where did we start? We talked about different strategies. A shout out to our coaches too, who came in and helped teachers dive into the curriculum, more of units of study. And we still have a lot of growth to do. And so at the end of the year, like Mr. Zervis had said, we dove deep into what can we still improve on? What can we still do? And we're looking at conventions, as we saw by the district data, and writing and responding to our reading. So like Mrs. Salto said, so I know we'll be able to work with Shields a little bit next year, do a little cross maybe PDs or something like that to support not only our staff but our students as well. So really excited about the growth that they did and how we kept looking. Mid-year we came together with an expectation walk of where is your data, what is the goal you want to continue to work on in the area of development, and then right before we took the final, they did their final writing piece. We went at that data again, like where are you feeling? What goals do you need? And just the overall improvement was really powerful, and really proud of all their hard work. And we'll continue to do that because there's a lot of growth still to do, and to make it part of their daily like writing habits and skills. Any questions for Stuart?
Yeah, from the fall assessments in second, third, and fifth grade, 0 students met or exceeded a grade. How is that test given? How is that possible?
So when they were given in the rubric that they had for Lucy Calkins, they did not score. So when they had it and we showed their data to them, they were in like a second or third grade level of writing in the area development. So they weren't meeting that expectation. And so when we brought them in, that's why we knew that was a focus, because our fall data looked like that. You know, we didn't. So we're like, okay, kids, when we're writing, we need to take this seriously, and this is what we're tracking. So we put it on them, and like clarity of learning for writing the quotes, you know, and like putting your, you know, personal, you know, emphasis in the writing and putting your piece in there and making it more was, so going from 0 to, that's why I'm like, you've got so much room to grow, you know, and I think that's what sparked the kids too, is showing them on this rubric, man, I scored in second grade, and they're like, oh, okay, what can I do? So we had writing reels out in the hallway, and teachers would take their kids there to show them what the progression of writing looks like. So kids could take their own writing out there and look at an exemplary piece at different grade levels, and sixth grade too, and then compare their writing, what are the differences. They had class discussions on it, and just that realization and taking time to put, you know, an emphasis on writing, a lot of growth can happen. But remember, this is one piece, and like I said, we want to continue to enhance our writing practices so that it's all the time routine, part of, you know, who we are as being strong writers.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. Okay.
Good evening. So I'm going to be presenting about KBK's SIP goal for the previous school year. And as you can see, our goal for the 2023-2024 school year was by February 2024, we were hoping to see 60% of our students, grades 1 through 5, achieving the on or above grade level in the development portion of a narrative writing rubric. So again, like Dr. Mungan mentioned, using that Lucy Calkins rubric and really looking at trying to increase our proficiency in the development portion. And this goal was created after our SIP team looked at last year's data, and we realized that most of our students ended at 50% in development on that rubric, and we really wanted to push those students and see if we can get to 60%. And so after we gave the pre-assessment in the fall, and then the midpoint check in late fall, and then after we gave the post-assessment in January, this is where our students had ended up. So there was some growth, and while we did not achieve that 60% grades 1 through 5, we do commend the hard work that our students and staff have done to this point as a starting point, especially that third grade reaching 62%, so going above. The admin team at KBK will continue to work with our SIP team and determine next steps and how we can support and grow our students and staff when it comes to writing. That includes really that focus on feedback and co-constructing conferences with students, and using the proficiency tables, promoting the SIP goal to our students and our staff throughout the year to just increase that encouragement and engagement with the SIP goal. Next year, we've had preliminary conversations with our SIP team. We are hoping to continue to support students and staff in writing
but we would like to start to look at our math practices and focusing on 2 specific math domains and try to increase our scores in those math domains while also encouraging our staff and teams to focus on writing in their KDAB goals. Any questions?
Can you explain why the number of students, pre-students, are so low? The pre, you have like 1 for first grade.
Yep, so those are the students that had achieved the goal. So in first grade, 1 student achieved that goal already, and so after the post, we had 36 students achieve the goal as outlined. And so yay, that 1 student, but then we were able to obviously have that growth as the year went on as well.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Turn it over to Kipla.
Okay, for KIPLA, as you'll recall, our SIP goal was not an academically based goal, it was a structural based goal, given that it was the first year of new structures being implemented. And so our goal focused not specifically on student achievement in reading, math, or writing, but it focused on students understanding the structures to support themselves in driving their own learning. So we were looking to help students develop an understanding of what an online learning continuum was in both ELA and in math, as well as to learn how to use their own personalized learning continuum to drive the creation of their own customized learning paths within their content areas. And so our goal was that by the end of this first year, 75% of our students would be able to not only use their online learning continuums within feedback conferences between themselves and their instructors, but that they would also be able to use those continuums to support the co-construction of learning within their content areas. And so we were very excited. 85% was what we were anticipating by the end of year 2. And by the end of year 1, we did have just over 85% of our students reporting a 3 or a 4 on a self-administered feedback form, indicating that not only did they understand their continuums, but that they were using them when conferencing with teachers to develop their own customized paths. So we're very confident that within this first year, our students absolutely learn the structures necessary to help engage as a co-creator of their own learning, and can take that then moving forward, not only into ELA and math, but we're currently finalizing our social studies and science learning continuums, and so we're looking to implement that again. Moving forward next year, Mrs. McCoy will be taking over the creation of the SIP goal. The KIPLA SIP team has already met once to have some conversations about what does the school improvement planning look like for KIPLA in its second year, given that we've already reached the structural point that we were hoping to be. The initial conversations really have focused, as you've heard, writing across the district. It's an area of concern, and that's no different at KIPLA. And so our initial conversations really are focused on our students' writing performance and how we can take some of the strategies that are being implemented within other schools, fit those into the KIPLA structure, and also support our students. So the goal for next year is not in any means finalized yet, but those are the initial conversations moving forward. Any questions for KIPLA? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'll try not to be too enthusiastic like I normally am. It's been a long one, but I don't know if I can do that. So, you know, we talked about the learner profile, and it really comes down to advocacy skills for students, knowing how to seek out support, what to do if they don't get whatever it is they're supposed to be learning. One of the best things that we do at Harder that I love is that we sit down with students, we ask them, we talk to them. Rather than giving them a survey or giving them an assessment, we talk to them. Like, what do you do if you're not learning something? Who can you turn to if you need help or assistance? And it's really fun to watch kids like explain to you at this age, like, I have this teacher that I absolutely love and I can go to her with whatever I need. So when we took our final results in February, because that's tied to teacher goals, we were 1 percentage point away from being distinguished. And that didn't sit well with us. So we immediately started looking at what do we need to do differently, because we truly believe advocacy skills is what we should be focusing on. Dr. Horn and I have talked a few times of how does this translate to the high school goal that they have with freshmen on track. So we really feel like advocacy skills are what we should be focusing on at the middle school. We missed the mark. We're still proficient, don't get me wrong, but we missed the mark in our eyes that we feel like we can reach more students. But now moving forward, we've already put in a lot of plans this past spring of what we're going to do walking into this school year, then obviously throughout the school year, that also incorporated the high school. You know, how do we combine, how do we work together a little bit more to really provide our students with what it is that they need in order to be successful. So I'm looking forward to coming back in October and talking about that. But with that being said, I will answer any questions you have. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Horn?
All right, good evening. As it was mentioned earlier today, an indicator that's reported to the state of Illinois on our report card as to how schools are doing at the high school level is what's called freshman on track. And what we mean by freshman on track is that they've earned 5 credits, they've earned one minimum of 1 F, ideally fewer. When we look at the historical trends in 2019, we were at about 95% of our freshmen being on track. Over a 4-year period, we dropped 8 percentage points, so it's 2 to 3 percentage points each year, and we're down around 86%. State average during that 4-year span of time remained consistent at 87%. What the research will show you is that freshmen on track is an indicator for graduation rate, with the exception of Kaneland, because what we're seeing at the high school is our graduation rate was in the mid to low 90s consistently. But our on track was going down. And what we found in pulling back some of the layers is that we were doing a lot of work to get kids caught up, and that does set a bad culture for student learning and student success. So we leaned heavily into our MTSS structure, into our homeroom structure, as well as into our small team data review, and worked focused this year on our freshmen specifically. And where we've landed is at 96% on track, which is where we were 4 years ago. So we've got that number back up. Moving forward, to piggyback off of what Mr. Faulkner was talking about, that vertical articulation, it's not just about passing classes, but about really being ready for high school and the system working better together to make sure that our students are prepared as they go into high school and that they're set up for success and starting that early. So I look forward to coming back with recommendations in the fall as to how we can better do that. Questions? Yes, sir?
Students on track. Any difference between students in the gen ed population and those with IEPs?
Yes, so we do have a higher number of students with IEPs that are not on track compared to students that are without IEPs. So it was at 89% on track rate. So I mean, it's lower. The number, yes, that's correct.
In both in terms of absolute number as
Correct,
well as
correct.
percentage.
Yes. It is above the state average, so that number did reverse, which is a good thing. Obviously, the goal is always to close that gap, and we have some work to do there.
I'd just like to say how impressive it is that it went up by 10% in 1 year. It's very good.
Thank you.
Very impressive.
Thank you. It's the hard work of the teachers and our support staff to make sure that happened.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think us as a board, we've kind of set the tone that we're always going to push for better and greater excellence. But I think it's important to highlight the celebrations as well. And so I just want to say thank you for all the hard work you've put into this. And I see it. I'm sure the rest of us see it as well. And, you know, as we move forward, don't ever take our strive or our drive as underappreciation. We truly see what goes behind it all. And just want to thank you guys. So.
Thank you.
All right.
I was going to say there's no action needed on this. And just a reminder, after hearing the presentation, if there's a specific data set or different information that you're looking for, contact myself at services. We can share out the information directly. We can provide that for you because I know that, again, as an overview, you didn't see a lot of the detailed numbers, but we have all of those which we derive the executive summaries from.
It would be cool to get a little bit of feedback on the fifth grade class between, I mean, if you communicate between all the schools, because that's, all fifth grade classes seem to dip down in their writing and their second assessment. So I don't know if you guys get a chance to collaborate. I don't know, come up with something. I'm just interested to know what's going on in fifth grade at that point where maybe driving down, their drive to want it to work at it or to write or whatever the case may be. I don't know.
What the high school and middle school are doing with the vertical integration, it seems like there's opportunity there for fifth grade to sixth grade transition and, I don't know, to piggyback on that.
We have actually run the
Yep, microphone.
We actually have run a little bit of the cohort analysis by sections of fifth grade and sections of fourth grade. And interestingly enough, although you see some dips, this year on IAR, we saw bigger fifth grade improvements than others. And so we're trying to do the analysis of what is it about the local assessments where we see some dips, because those are things that are embedded in our practices. But then when we take that week away of like regular instruction to this IAR thing, you perform on it. And so we know that the academic acquirement of the content is there because we saw it on the standardized state test, but it's almost as if they are not thinking and focusing on the assessments that we do embedded in our instructional practices as an assessment of learning and more an activity. And so we had some discussions with the MTSS coordinators of how to make a little bit of an emphasis like we do for a standardized test of this is a culmination of your learning and almost the PR of it a little bit more, because we know the academic rigor of understanding is there because they've shown it on one test, just not our in-practice test. So yeah, that was something that the coordinators and I started to discuss before they left for summer, and then we jump back in it when they come back in August.
Yeah, because it was a trend across all the schools, so it's like, it stood out, so, cool.
Yep. And in reading, the one area where we see guided reading taper off the most is fifth grade, and that's one thing with our fidelity, we want to make sure guided reading continues all the way up through the end of fifth grade. So that was one of our actions as well. Yeah.
Further comments? Okay, no recommendation on this one. At this time, if you'd like to take the opportunity to get home, I know it's getting late, feel free to head out to your families or whatnot. But we're going to go ahead and move on to J5. The fifth item of new business is the Kaneland referendum update and discussion. Dr. Layton.
Yes, thank you. Tonight, we don't have, what we do have for you is primarily the timeline. And you'll see at the last meeting, our Board of Education determined November was not the right timeline for the board to consider too quick in some instances. More information is needed. So we did backwards map it to April. So you'll see on the memo, three primary goals for this tonight is to share that timeline, share through some of the highlights of the timeline. Then number two, Mr. Chavez has an updated communication plan, a video, what the website is going to look like, those pieces of information in real time. And then the last thing is based on the timeline and the communication, any other feedback from the Board of Education, because July, we're probably not going to have a formal update unless there's something that we determine tonight, and then we'll start some back-to-school forums, get some information from our families as they come back to school, which still gives us enough time on the timeline to get us ready by the beginning of April, if that's for the timeline that we're going to stay on. So what I'll share is if you look at the memo on the second page, it has the timeline. The keys to know that tonight, again, just to the communication plan, see it in real time, see what Mr. Chavez has updated. Then again, July is more of an off month as we get ready to go back to school. Then in August, we will finalize and share the information with our communities as they come back to school. We know that July, vacation time, people are out of town, not always checking emails from the district. So then we're gonna plan some of the forums for the fall to get additional board feedback, community feedback, and be able to bring that back to the board. Then September, the projects, the amounts, talk more about that piece and share that out with the Board of Education. And then October, more communication, any other forums that are needed, and again, the big key is being January. December or January, the ballot question, the projects, the amounts, and you'll just see more information that the board has asked for with details. So you'll see more of the projects with more details as we move forward. So I know that is one of the things that the board has asked for. So you'll see more details, you'll see more information, you'll see, as Mr. Chavez is pulling it up, you'll see more details of the communication plan and what we expect our families to be able to see and hear, because I know one of the questions that we've had a few times from the board, what are we sharing, what are we hearing? And you'll see that the communication plan incorporates some of the videos, some pictures, more information in real time, because I think as we bring people to the district or to the high school on tours, that's the most informative things that we've been able to do. So with that, we will see if, come on, Colin, work some magic.
Did you integrate in here an opportunity for the board to interact, whether it be a forum or a?
Yep.
Okay, so that's part of this.
That's what we're hoping those August dates are, and then after we share the plan, we'll get more information here and into the summer, back early fall, more of those, the forum type practices that I know that we had in October that the board appreciated.
Sure. Okay.
Could be your bathroom break or your water break if you need it.
All right, just a quick setup here. Going to start out with a video. I know one of the important pieces of feedback that we received was that the community would like to be communicated to via short videos. A lot of community members did not make it out to the tour, so basically what this is going to be a nice little kickoff. It's going to provide community members with a tour for those of them that didn't visit the forum, and this will walk everybody through the various facilities at our schools that need improvement. So again, we'll start off with a quick video, and then I'll get into a more detailed communications plan that will consist of more videos, graphics, and a whole wide array of ways to communicate with the community. So start off with this.
The Kaneland School District, deeply valuing the community's role, will seek your crucial consideration in a referendum on the upcoming April 1st, 2025 election. This referendum is not just a collective effort, but a testament to the power of our community to address the challenges many schools in the district face. Kaneland High School, the oldest building in the district, was built in 1958. This has led to a range of issues that are not just challenges, but significant hurdles impacting the learning environment for our students and staff. Student service functions, including the nurse and support staff, are not effectively located for student pickup and lack confidential settings needed to protect the privacy of students. The main entrance is undersized and lacks identity, while a controlled reception area with significantly enhanced security for everyone within the school with a more organized check-in process. Additionally, corridor configurations provide limited staff supervision and cause congestion, impacting the overall safety and functionality of the school. Due to the maintenance of the building's infrastructure and mechanicals, many components such as boilers, chillers, and HVAC equipment are still operating beyond their life expectancy. However, these components and many roof areas are approaching or exceeding their useful life. Aging science labs are inefficient and poorly aligned with the current curriculum necessary for students to meet standards set forth for science, engineering, and math. Special education spaces are compartmentalized within the school and are disrupted by woodshop activities, creating an environment that could interrupt effective learning. Furthermore, internal classrooms need more natural daylight and small group spaces. diverse learning settings are unavailable to support student agency. The typical classrooms must be more organized and rely on traditional amenities, limiting collaboration and personalized learning opportunities that contribute to social and emotional well-being. Underutilized program spaces do not support current educational needs, and significant public spaces need to be zoned to allow separation for after-hour community use, which would create more opportunities for the Kaneland community to utilize the spaces. Many student and staff restrooms are used by the general public for various events. However, the restrooms are outdated and lack accessibility compliance, contributing to a negative perception of Kaneland facilities and posing challenges for those with disabilities. In addition, locker rooms and ancillary athletic spaces need to be updated to be made more equitable for all students, improving safety and the overall experience, so that student athletes can excel at the competitive level of other nearby districts. To maintain their facilities and equitability, the district's elementary schools also need mechanical and infrastructure maintenance and additions, such as roofing, flooring, ventilation, and gym air conditioning. Addressing these challenges is not just a necessity, but a beacon of hope for Kaneland schools. It's a step towards ensuring a safe and high-quality learning environment and a brighter future for all students. Our students deserve the same opportunities afforded to children in surrounding districts with updated academic and athletic facilities. The upcoming referendum is a vital part of this journey, helping us meet these needs and making a positive and lasting impact on the future of education in our community. Please visit www.kaneland.org/referendum for more information.
All right, so as I mentioned there, that is just one of the videos that will be created. I'll talk a little bit more about a full communications plan at this point and get into more details. So basically, we believe this plan meets the stakeholders where they want to be met. We've heard a lot of feedback that many stakeholders like those short bits of information, give us the details in quick videos, quick graphics, those type of things. So we have that. And then we also are going to have some opportunities to really get into the nuts and bolts and get into all the details of the planning for those community members that do want to see complete details. And I'll talk a little bit more about where that information will be placed on the various platforms that we have available. In addition to that, I would like to start off by saying that pretty much all the platforms that we will have available for communicating are designed to reach everybody. So not just our parents who have students in schools, but also those community members who do not have any students in schools. There's really only one platform that we use, which is School Messenger, and now converting to Infinite Campus, which is our one platform that is just designed specifically to reach those parents of students. So with that being said, one of the main goals is going to be to highlight the long-term benefits for the entire community, not just those members that have students in the school. So we want to go through and identify how the final plan of the referendum in terms of projects and that final amount really is going to help benefit and provide long-term benefits to the entire community. And then in addition to that, we do want to educate the community about the impact of the referendum's outcome on the school district. So kind of show both of those sides, what happens if it's approved and what happens if it's not. And then the third goal, main goal, will be to address any concerns and misconceptions regarding the referendum. So once we have that detailed plan put in place, we can then speak to any concerns that the community has about the impact of that plan on them. We've identified August 2024 as being a great time to kind of kick off this referendum promotion, really get out there and start showing all those videos, start promoting the website, all those type of things. As you know, a lot of people are out on summer vacation right now, so definitely don't want to launch a huge communications plan with a lot of our main community members that will be tied to this not being available. And then also at the beginning of the school year, there's all that enthusiasm going on. We're going to have a lot of people that are going to be invested in the beginning of the school year, so that's a great time to get their attention on this. As the board discussed, that date to vote will be April 1st, 2025, so I'll get into more details and the frequency and those type of things, but essentially this communications plan will run from August 2024 through April of 2025. So as I mentioned earlier, we have various marketing channels that will be utilized throughout this communications plan for the referendum. We're going to have the website, which you just heard on the video there, www.kaneland.org/referendum. We'll get into a little bit more details about that soon. We have our newsletters. We have the KCN. We will also be launching a new newsletter at the beginning of the school year, which will be more focused on information. Right now, the KCN has a lot of different information in it, but we like to see that more for our storytelling, for our accomplishments, for celebrating our students. And the new newsletter will be more focused on information. Here's what you need to know for the week. It'll be going out every Monday morning to make sure that our parents are set up for success, to make them aware of any events, any major things going on, anything that's upcoming essentially. So KCN kind of more celebrating what has happened. This newsletter will be more focused on what's upcoming for you for the week, for the month, to make sure that you're staying informed. And part of that will be this newsletter will have a placeholder there. So every single week when it goes out, there's going to be a section there dedicated to the referendum. We can have a countdown that says, you know, hey, 299 days left to the referendum. Here's what you need to know. Here's some new information for you this week. Here's how you get the old information that we've already put out over the last couple weeks or months or however long it's been. So that way everybody can stay fully informed throughout the whole process. We also have our social media accounts, which have thousands of followers, especially on Facebook. We're building up the Instagram at this point, adding followers there. Our X audience is very large as well. So it's going to be a great platform to get some information out, and I'll talk a little bit more details about how we're going to reach those, community members that aren't necessarily tied into the school. News outlets, part of the plan will be to send out regular press releases to the news outlets. That has been a little bit helpful so far. We got some success there with sending out press releases related to our referendum forum recently. And some of the local media outlets did write a news story about the forums that we held, and also some other information related to the referendum. So that will become more regular, and I will stay in constant contact with some of the sources that I already have within the media outlets in the community to see what we can do to get more positive news stories in there about the referendum and just get that information out there to the community. And again, another great way to reach those folks who aren't necessarily tied into the school. Door-to-door is, and again, a great way to reach all your community members. So we hope at some point that, you know, we have the resources to get out there and get out to every single door in the district and make sure that we're providing information, answering any questions that they may have, and making sure that they're aware of the upcoming referendum. We will have town halls. Our plan is to do those virtually and in person. At least I'll get into more details about the frequency here, but in general, we're going to have both those virtual ones and the in-person ones. So give the folks the opportunity to just sign in virtually, which we hope will increase the attendance for those. Targeted presentations. So we will have ways to kind of just present all the information that we have available about the referendum to various stakeholders in the community, and I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up soon as well. So here's where we get into more details. Here is the actual marketing mix. So we have our short videos, as we just talked about, and just showed one of them. I plan to kind of even shorten those even further and get into more specific topics as we proceed on. And basically those short videos will go onto our social media account, and also they'll be housed at the website. Also our YouTube channel, which is part of that social media. So we're going to have these housed where they will be easily accessible to anybody who would like to watch them. The plan is to update those weekly, so hey, we have a new topic. We're going to focus this week on the locker rooms. A video will be made about the locker rooms, and that will be put out weekly to kind of keep the conversation going, but again, also not bombarding our community with a ton of information all at once. So the audience for that will be the general public, and the goal is really, again, just to engage and inform through that visual storytelling. Town halls in person and virtual, we plan to do that monthly. That's going to reach hopefully all our residents, and we're going to promote all those and make sure that everybody's fully aware of those and they're able to easily attend. Really our focus there is going to be residents, parents, and local leaders on that. Detailed information. The website's going to be a great place to house that. So for those community members who just want to get into a ton of details, want to read everything that we have in terms of the plans, the projects, and everything like that, will be housed at our website. That's going to be the best place for that type of information. We plan to kind of update that bi-weekly just as we get new information. We'll kind of really just be updating that almost in real time. So that'll be for our general public and our stakeholders there. So really it's to hopefully provide those in-depth resources that our community members want. So next we will have newsletter. I kind of touched on that a little bit already, explained the differences of our newsletters, so I'll go ahead and proceed on that one. We touched on the door-to-door, looking at maybe tri-monthly on that. Again, depends on resources as we build up the YES group and other groups such as that to be able to take on that task. Social media advertising, so this is tied to that social media category. This will be important to definitely reach that non-school community. So with that social media advertising, what that allows us to do is to basically show our social media posts to people who don't follow us. So, of course, we're hitting our parents and those community members who are tied into the school because they're following us on Facebook, they're following us on Instagram. But for those community members who are not, we will be able to work with the social media companies to identify who the groups are that we want to focus on, the area, the geographic area, and we'll be able to then do some social media advertising, which again will show our social media posts to those who aren't necessarily interacting with us or following us. Hope to do that weekly, and we will make sure that that information gets out to the community one way or another. Whether you're following us or not, you're going to see it. Press releases I talked about a little bit already, and we've had some success with that, and we'll just continue to be consistent with that to make sure that the local media is aware of the referendum. We keep it also in their face, so they're also looking for those opportunities to share that information with their readers. Community events, really looking to have some interactive booths, some engagement to again address any concerns that the community may have, keep them informed. Some examples of that would be the Sugar Grove Corn Boil and any other community events that we can attend. Our goal would be to be able to have a booth there and again share information. I think another good opportunity there as well will be other community events that are even within the school. So a sporting event, something like that, that also is hosted by the Kaneland School District, that we can also make sure that we're keeping everybody informed that way as well. All right, we also plan to engage with the influential community members. We have started to do that a little bit with our forum, identifying those who really get out into the community, who talk to everybody and really share information with their neighbors and those type of things. So also politicians, local politicians as well, we hope to connect with and see what ways that we can work with them in order to share information with their community members as well. Targeted presentations, so again, just really sharing that information. We would like to focus on senior centers to kind of reach those senior residents and hopefully share information and spread information that way. Churches, HOA meetings, again, plan is to reach out to all these organizations in the community, make connections, see how we can work together to support their congregations, their community members, and see how we can help share that information with them and hopefully create a good relationship there. Mailer campaign. So U.S. mail or door-to-door, Mail campaigns can get quite pricey, so the hope there is to identify ways to definitely reduce that cost. Designing the mailers in-house, whether that be through me or some of our high school classes as well, and then identifying the best way to distribute those to ensure that we again hit hopefully the majority of pretty much every house in the community at least once, and make sure that they're aware of the information, the referendum coming up, and also ways to connect with us by getting plugged into our website, our newsletter, QR codes to scan to kind of get connected with us across the board. All right, so community members without school-age children, as I mentioned, really all of our tactics here are going to be designed to reach out to those members as well as those that are involved in our school community. So really that's going to be your kind of main points though. We're going to be that social media advertising, which will be kind of one of the main components as everybody's on social media. And that social media advertising again allows us to put our information in front of the faces of those who don't necessarily interact with us. Town halls, website, newsletter, the door-to-door, the mailer, press releases to get that information in the news, those community events and those targeted presentations to different organizations though will be kind of the highlights to reach those folks. All right, so before we get into, we got some referendum topics here, and these are just a few that we've identified, and this list will continue to be built. So basically what we want to do is identify the key topics there that people have questions and concerns about, and then at that point I will be identifying the best way to disseminate that information as well. So in some cases that may be a video, a short video, if there's a good opportunity there to maybe do a video on the harder bonds falling off in the year 2029, that's what will be done. But if there's a better opportunity to maybe promote that through a graphic or through other means, then that will also be identified as well. So just to go through some of the topics here, we have, as I mentioned, the harder bonds falling off in several years from now, the tax impact, which we presented recently, so in terms of how much the amount the referendum is for, what is your home value, here's what your tax impact is going to be. So that can be, a video, that could also be a graphic. So again, finding ways to kind of maximize this information and get it out to the community properly. Athletics, so again, highlighting athletics, highlighting those individual projects. I know there's a lot of questions last time around about the terminology used, maybe understanding of what this particular project does to benefit students. So that'll be one way that we can just really zero in on those individual projects and break them on down to explain the reason and the need for it. Capital project reduction, so if a referendum passes, automatically reduces your capital project list, so meaning we can kind of get to those projects that are on the list much quicker and resolve those concerns. Educational impacts, community benefits, and again, much more, and that list will continue to grow. Any questions or concerns that we get, if it becomes a pattern or even if it doesn't, if we find that it's important, a video will be made about that, a social media post will be made about it, a graphic, wherever that information fits best, so we can get that information out to the community. There will be ways to monitor the effectiveness of this campaign. We have many tools for analytics within our social media. The social media advertising will break it down for us. So if we do a social media ad on Facebook, it's going to tell us exactly how many people we reached, demographics of the people we reached, the areas that we reached. So we'll be able to measure those, the success or the lack thereof, and then be able to pivot and make those adjustments and changes to make sure that we're reaching the people that we want to reach. That goes the same for our internal social media accounts. We'll also be able to monitor how many times the website gets hit, selected, reviewed. We'll also be able to monitor the amount of times that our videos are watched through YouTube and other analytics. So there are certainly going to be ways to identify the success of this campaign and then adjust and make sure that we're reaching those folks that we need to reach again. So yeah, the referendum website is up and running. Currently we have some information on there in terms of what we have available. So right now we have the referendum small group notes. So those are basically, a few months ago, the referendum planning team went around every single school in the district and essentially met with pretty much every teacher and staff member in the district, and we talked through the referendum, what their needs are, what feedback they have, and just really captured all the information that they had to share with us. So those have been kind of summarized and put into categories, and that information is up on the website to view. We also have a referendum update, which was presented to the board recently, so that slideshow is up there as well. We also have our timelines and other feedback up there. So really all the information that we gathered so far through our surveys, our meeting with all the staff members, and our presentations here at the board are available to view. Also, we'll have a FAQ question, or FAQ section. Right now we have some information in there, but that'll continue again to build and also add more questions and answers in there as they come into us to make sure that we're addressing those for the entire community. We'll have a section in there, as you can see, for questions and comments. Anybody can go to this website and leave us some information, and I'll get back to them and also identify that needs to be shared out with the rest of the community as well. The link to our YouTube channel, which will house all of our videos, so they can easily access all the videos that we'll have from there. Voter services, that is a link that takes our viewers of this website over to see the Illinois Voter Services webpage. That's going to give them information about how they can get registered to vote if they're not already registered. One important component, I think, will be the mail-in ballot section of that website. As we go into April, could be potential for people going on vacations, those type of things. So we want to make sure the community is fully aware and gets signed up for those mail-in ballots that typically arrive a couple months before the election. They can easily fill it out within the comfort of their home, get those mailed in, and make sure they get their vote into us. And then we have the last link there, which really just shows kind of where we started with the referendum a couple years ago, everything that was included in that, just to kind of make sure that everybody's aware that that's kind of what happened a couple years ago, and kind of compare that to where we are now. So with that being said, I think we're also going to do some branding. We're going to make sure that we kind of have a unified vision. Once we kind of get more details, really just kind of narrow down that plan of the projects. So I think that'll be part of the campaign as well. We'll have maybe a tagline that will be kind of shown in every single one of our communications, our videos, our social media. Still working on that branding aspect of it, but we will certainly have branding within those social media posts and those videos so that when somebody sees it, they're very clear on what this video is about. Any questions?
Any thought to having a Rumble channel as well?
Sure, yeah, Rumble is certainly
running parallel to the YouTube. I don't foresee, there's a whole segment who prefer Rumble.
Yeah, Rumble's very popular.
And if we're doing on a video intensive approach, all the outlets we possibly can.
Sure, you're right. Be able to kind of just get that information blast out, get that out to every single platform and outlet we can do it on.
Get it posted to our channels.
Sure,
Yeah.
would be a great resource as well.
So I know we have the FAQ, and you said you could put comments up, but do we have like an actual email address people can, so like at the end of every video, any flyers, anything we put out, if you have further questions? It's like you made the comment, we want to add stuff to it, we want to make videos, but we want to respond to people, but we're only responding to each other at this point. So if we have people outside of our walls sending emails and saying, hey, I have this question, and you start seeing patterns of that, then you know how to respond to that. So do we have something where people can email, not have to go to this link again? This school link is, again, more parent focused, so we're trying to say, because I'm thinking to, small towns, stuff like that, all of our restaurants, everybody puts up flyers and stuff like that. If we had flyers everywhere, it had QR code, and that could take them someplace where if you have, or even the tagline, have any other questions, or you said no last time, why, and tell us why, or, what are your questions, how do we get you to say yes, what is your question? And I think that's the only way we're gonna get the voice outside of the people we've been talking to, is if they have a way to reach out to us. So I don't know what your plan is for that.
Sure, yeah, we could have multiple ways to reach out. Of course, reaching out to me directly is an option, but also, as you mentioned, the website. But in terms of an email address, that's something we can certainly look into.
I was just thinking
with
something
the
that would be
IT team.
consistent would be that, like, have more questions, referendum at Kaneland.org, whatever, and it's on our videos, it's on our flyers, it's on our posters. It's something that absolutely everybody knows because, yeah, we know your email, or the parents, teachers know the website and stuff like that. But for our community members that might be standing at Alice's getting ice cream and they see a flyer, they might not know necessarily, so if there's something, and then we just have that one consistent email people can refer to.
Something we can look into. I guess my concern with just a specific email address, I'd rather, if we're going to have a QR code that they have to scan anyway, I'd rather drive them to our website where they have the opportunity to give that feedback, but then also the opportunity to review all the information that we have at the same time versus, hey, I just shot you an email, but I didn't really, I didn't look at anything, I didn't see any resources that you had. So I think a great opportunity would be to, instead of driving them to an email account, drive them to that website through a QR code where they can leave a comment just as they would via email, but then see all that other information as well.
But you're also missing a portion of people that don't know how to do QR codes. So if you have something, again, and your emails it could be an automatic response, saying, did you check, somebody sent something, you have an automatic, you still get their message, but it also reminds them, hey, here's our links, if any of your, have you gone to our website first? Your question might have been answered, or it might be answered there. Send them there, but then also you can have something automatic, but then also see their question. I'm worried that we're gonna miss things that we're not thinking of. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we're obviously missing some of the concerns that other community members have. And if we don't reach to them and find out, and maybe they might not send emails, but I wanna get outside of the people that have been attending our meetings, the teachers, us talking. It's been all of us at this point, so how do we reach those that are still unsure of everything that's going on, have a lot of questions, so.
Okay, yeah, good feedback there. I can make note of that, look into it.
I wasn't around for the last referendum. I mean, I kind of tail end of it. This seems pretty robust as far as the amount of different ways of communicating. The last time we pushed for referendum, was it like this at all? Was it in the same, from social media posts to, local media to newspaper, et cetera, et cetera? Was that happening with the videos, like 7-second, 30-second TikTok style videos or anything like that? Was none of that?
It felt a little stagnant to some extent. It felt like we were just saying, here's a referendum, come vote for it.
Yeah, that's my point.
No, I agree.
This is great, yeah.
I
said, I want to make sure we have one statement, or we have one place, like you said. The QR code's great if you know how to use that, but also somebody can also, if you're on Facebook or something's posted on a video, have that QR code every time, or have that email or something like that. Like you said, hopefully most people will go to the QR code, go straight to the website versus that email.
Yeah, sure. We want to make sure we capture every opportunity there to reach every community member. So if that's additional way that we can get more people in the loop, I'm all for it, and something we can look into and get set up maybe through our IT team and see what that kind of looks like, as you mentioned, automatic replies, all that type of stuff. So certainly a good way for.
How much work that's going to be for you too. When it comes to,
it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I mean, that's a customer relationship manager system essentially, a CRM. So that's what we can look into getting set up as well. So certainly all those opportunities are welcomed.
Has there been, I didn't hear any mention of this, but has there been any consideration of an in-house strategy where we're disseminating the information within the schools at all different levels? And, I don't want to put pressure on the teachers to push the referendum, but there may be teachers out there that are interested in it, particularly in the high school, the ones that are in the space, working, that are able to, communicate to the kids, or, I don't know, I didn't hear anything regarding the in-house strategy, the internal strategy for disseminating the information out to the public.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I didn't touch too much on that. I mentioned it a little bit. So we do have just our all Kaneland employees internal email account where we would reach those staff members. And then also to the Infinite Campus, as I mentioned, which is going to go, we can kind of tailor that to go to our parents, our staff members, and all those type of things. So didn't get into that too much because I know the focus has been a little bit more on reaching those non-school community members, just because I find that it shouldn't be too challenging to get that information out to our staff, so I didn't get too deep into that. But certainly our internal email account and our Infinite Campus messaging, the system for that will be ways that we will also make sure that when we're sending this information to our parents, we're also including our staff members in that as well. So that'll get blasted out to them as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of generating excitement, though, generating activity, because we can send them information all day, but I don't know. I'm not. This isn't my area of expertise, but it's like we don't necessarily want to send them an email saying here's the referendum information, but it's like how can we get them excited about it to the point where they're going to want to, you know what I mean? And that's the community as a whole. I just feel like we have a closer reach with our our teachers and our staff members.
It's a messaging issue.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, and having a coherent approach on messaging. Like, for example, there's a reason why housing prices in Downers Grove 99 for comparable homes, because you have a top-tier district, or Hinsdale 86. We have a top-tier district where per cubic foot, or I'm sorry, per square foot, your housing valuations are far more than in Westmont or Lyle, or let's just go with it. That there is an upside for everybody. Not just students who will be getting new and better facilities, teachers with a better environment in which to teach, students in which to learn, but these things can be win-wins for communities. And it shows in certain communities, where, there's a reason why Lyons Township 204, property values there are far better than if you're in Proviso, what is it? 214? It makes a difference.
But to your point, the internal energy, the teachers are excited about it, the high schoolers are excited about it. This is, a change for them, it's a change for the future. It's like, how do we draw that internal energy for them to, so when you walk in the school, so when you talk to a high schooler, or, they're like, oh yeah, of course, they're telling their parents, yes, please, post this, or not post this, vote for this, and the teachers are saying too, oh yeah, 100%, I'm supportive of this. And so what does that energy look like? Obviously, yeah, emails are great because that's information that's helping them to understand all the logistical parts, the details, all the things that we're trying to grasp our hands around. But that energy is different too. That's just, getting everybody to be on board. So I don't know what that looks like either.
I'd just like to kind of piggyback on that, the internal. I had I was invited for the June 21st meeting with a multitude of the coaches. On Friday, there was probably about 8 to 12 different coaches I spoke to. I got to hear and I got to see in their faces the excitement of what they were looking to do with this referendum. And they had a lot of great ideas, collaborative ideas that don't mix with what the graphic is right now. And after talking to them, I was on it for about an hour, a Zoom meeting with them. And I told them, I said, we really need to push this visualization. We need to see, the community needs to see what exactly is going to be, put on the referendum. And I told them, I said, hey, they did a spreadsheet. Each sport broke it down like what I need, and not necessarily like, real expensive items. It was what I talked about, not putting, lipstick on the place, but it was, we need locker rooms updated. We don't need this football field. We don't need turf on the soccer field. We need this field moved. We need drainage. But nobody knows about that until it's actually visual. And they talked about getting together with the engineer and architect, and I recommend that they get with them. And I see we're projected September to make any design changes. I think we need to do that like now. We're June. By the time that they all organize, I recommended a committee, or one of the coaches recommended a committee, just a handful of the coaches to get together and get with the architect, do a line item, kind of break it down and say, hey, what is this actually going to cost, so that they can show the community. But they're excited. They're actually excited that a lot of these fields and these things have been neglected for so long. I mean, we started with the track. That's a big victory. Now it's okay. We got drainage tiles. We got issues here. We got lights here, we got fencing around the track that's, what, 30, 40 years old, something like that. Little things like this that we can add and get on paper so that people can see. So I told him, I said, I would love to see you guys get with the engineer, architect, if you guys would be willing to redo the design. They had an actual map they were talking about. We don't know where the cross-country track is on the actual graphic that was presented. I said, we need to see that, put that all together and see if that's a win, you know, see if the community is gonna like that. But I recommend them doing that. They are excited, they're motivated, they're ready to move forward. And I think if we start taking something big like that, we saw the athletics up there as a big topic. Let's get it moving, let's get it moving forward. I think waiting till September would take too long, but there is excitement.
So, but that's athletic internal, we talking also academic
overall.
internal. So trying to match what that energy is too, of what is that message. So athletics has kind of formulating, figuring out their message. So what does that mean for our teachers? What does that mean for us as a board, administration? So we have that same energy within working with each other.
I mean, to some extent, that could be the seed that's planted, though, that grows it. I mean, what percentage of our kids are in athletics? It's a high percentage. I forget the exact number. Yeah, so.
But there is also some feeling out there too, community members going, athletics doesn't always take you to college. Athletics doesn't take you to a career. I think a big portion of our community too is saying, okay, that's great, but this building is about education. So inside, if you're telling us our spoilers and our classrooms are not, and the books and the technology and stuff like that, I don't want to miss that part of it, because there is I don't know what that percentage is of the community that's going, yeah, great, athletics is so important and it's such a vital, especially social emotional learning part of the education. But then there's also the people that are like, well, great, we got that part, but what about the other part? What are we doing for that too? So I don't want to miss that message. It's got to be both.
Yeah. Are you guys collaborating with not only KAA, but the teachers in general to see, you know, what they're feeling? Because I know that was a big obstacle for us last time, is we didn't feel like we had the support of the. Yeah.
Part of what Mr. Chavez shared is that we went to each of the buildings and met with them and compiled that list. So as we get ready to do that again, we will revisit, re-meet, and make sure that we have those priorities set. So as we need to have those meetings, I think that's where Mr. McCauley, Board Member McCauley, shared the challenge. The internal piece is harder when staff are away for the summer. So I think part of that goal was to have some of those plans, some of those ideas, see what feedback the board had tonight, some of the things that you've shared that you're looking for, that you need, so that way when we do get back to school, we can move it along quickly with enough time. And I think, Ryan, to answer your question, Mr. Kleisner, sorry, to answer your question, part of the difference now was we have more time to plan in advance with the Director of Communication. So that kind of changes it from the last time when there was less time to plan, and the Vote Yes group that finally assembled had 4 people. And I think when the board identifies the plan, identifies the amount, that the Vote Yes group that is separate from us, that does work alongside us, we can assemble them and they can get moving much quicker and have more time to work and get their message out as well.
I'm with Aaron. I'm with you on that. It should be done sooner rather than later. But the strong point is that everyone's gone for the summer or checked out for the summer in regards to being, and so it's difficult to get people to collaborate more. The other thing I wanted to bring up just briefly while we're talking about the timeline is I believe the actual election day is on spring break.
It's during spring break.
It's during spring break, which is something to consider if we're a school district asking for money and we want votes. So just, I don't know, it doesn't correlate to this specifically, but something to consider as we're strategizing.
But it does when, like you were talking about,
Mail-in
early
ballots?
voting.
Yeah, right, you brought it up, yeah.
So acknowledging that, hey, you're gonna be on spring break, but we still need your vote, these are your other options if you're not gonna be around.
That will absolutely be promoted, and
Yeah.
we'll try to drive as much traffic as we can to the voter website to make sure that they're signed up for those mail-in ballots. So, any other questions for the communications plan at all? All right, thank you.
And or along those same lines with Mr. Chavez, other feedback, some of these points, some have been repeated, and it's good to hear them over again. Some are new and different, which is appreciated, but is there other feedback from the communication plan, or other information that ultimately the board needs to have to be confident to make a decision by January at the latest, of what the projects are and the amount of money. What do you need to have that we can continue to try to compile to bring back to the board?
I know it's been suggested, and this is a small detail, but for these community forums, for these things where we're trying to get people to come out, I know a lot of people have made the suggestion that if you feed them, they will come. Now, I know we don't have a large budget, but just something to consider, maybe if we, I don't know, I kept hearing that, and
Okay.
I don't want the people to come for the free sandwiches, but, you know, if we have refreshments or make it enticing within a, you know, just something I've heard.
Well, and off location. I mean, do we go to libraries? Do we go to the Lions Club? Do we go to?
their home turf, yeah.
We need to go to Montgomery. We need to go to Maple Park. You know, we need to go to the different locations too. So I don't know what those spaces look like, but.
All right, thank you.
I mean, I know that doesn't give us a tour here. That's the whole point of coming here, or the high school, I should say. But if we had the videos, then we could always show that too and stuff like that, but.
The videos and/or pictures, the website, that will
Yeah.
be part of the messaging when we're off-site and not on the high school proper.
Yeah.
Okay, any other
There's no action needed on this.
comments? Okay. There's no action needed on this, so with that being said, we'll move on to the sixth item of new business, which is the approval of policies from press, first reading. Dr. Layden.
Yes, there is action needed for this one. On first reading, again, you recall, press policies come out quarterly with recommended policy updates, amendments, and changes. Some of them are statute-related, some of them are state code, and some are state law. As you saw in this packet, there's only about 16 or 18, which is nice comparatively, that some of the ones that they have had. A couple things to know, that there is, as you look through this, you saw several names of principals and administrators that are representatives of each of the buildings. There will be a full search and replace to all of these once we have all of the spots filled, so that, to make sure that all of the names apply with who are in the actual positions when we start school. So that's one piece to know. If you take a second and turn to, it's page 39, that is in the policy, as you saw, and from the update I shared when I emailed you, this is the only policy that has a question that applies to it. I want to talk you through that a little bit, because that's one of the important things when the board does have latitude on some of these. If you recall, some are just mandates, they are required to change, but this one we actually have some say over. So the question, at the bottom of 39, question 1, for districts that have a practice providing life-saving techniques and first aid staff development, we offer at the Ignite Academy, the Ignite conference in the fall, we do offer 2 or 3 sessions on this training. So we do offer it. So it's my recommendation, because we do offer those opportunities, to go with the paragraph that follows right below it. It's either no, we don't do it, or yes, we do, which is that the opportunity will be provided for staff members to acquire, develop, and maintain that knowledge. I think as long as we offer those sessions, as long as we offer that training, it would make sense for us to match that policy.
Sure.
And so that's really the only one that has a question on it. So by approving this on first reading, you'll be approving that. And I think at some point, if that conference changes, or if we don't offer it on a regular basis, we'd have to revisit this and see if that needs to be pulled off. But right now, we do offer that training, and it's not required. It's not required that everybody attend the training. It just says that we will provide it, and we do provide it annually for our staff members. The other note, there are about 6 of the policies that are interrelated, from 2260 all the way through 720. There's 6 different policies within this packet that I also shared are completely interrelated, and most of them are requirements. So as we do those, we already have an appointment scheduled with Maureen Lemon, our current attorney, legal firm, to come out to our ad team training in July to give us professional development on all of the updates and changes that are required as part of these policies and Title IX as well. So I know policy is always a lot, and it's always a lot at 10:17 at night. I understand that, but wanted to share the recommendation for 5100, and then also see if you had any questions on any of the other policies, as the other 17 or 18 are all mandates or state code updates.
Questions, comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Leeden. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the recommended policy changes from press on first reading. Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Policies from press are approved upon first reading.
Thank you.
Now, time for the Board and Superintendent report. Dr. Leeden.
Yes, first thing that I have, just as a reminder, at our organization meeting in April, the board took action to move the board meetings to 6 o'clock. So it's July, which is our next meeting. If you come at 7 o'clock, you'll get here sometime about J3 or J4. So just a reminder that we do start at 6. I think that will allow us to clearly get done a little earlier and not have to get home regularly after 10 o'clock. So that will be a change that is the board already took action on, and we will update that. One other item that I want to share, as you saw new business, the personnel report that Dr. Horn accepted the position for Director of Ed Services. We are now in the midst of interviewing for a principal, and so to replace Dr. Horn, as much as he's irreplaceable, but we do have to move forward with that. One of the challenges is the timeline, because we go a full meeting between now or a full month between now and the next meeting. So as we interview and we have our lead candidate that we want to bring back to the board for approval, please know that based on the timing, a typical administrator at a high school would start July 1. So we're going to bump up to being into July 1 or after July 1 with the interview process. So what I may request is that we have a special board meeting for just the topic to approve the high school principal. And again, as long as the board is in support of that, if one or two board members can't make it, but again, as long as we have feedback on the person and on the posting, that we would be able to do that so that person can start sooner rather than later. As you know, some candidates will wait until they have board approval before they formally start. So as we go through the interview process, I will keep you updated on that. And again, it would be a 6 o'clock start. It would be probably a 15-minute meeting just to approve that. That would be our primary topic, just to make sure that that person has a board-approved contract. So that was the only other update that I had for you. So look for that either doodle poll or just an email, text message, just confirming that we can get a date sooner rather than later once we have our candidate of choice. Those are my two updates.
All right, Dr. Fuchs?
I don't have any tonight, thank you.
Well, moving right along, topics for future agendas.
I got one. Geneva, not calling out Geneva, but they just got hit with a federal lawsuit because of student bullying. And just from a loss control perspective, to make sure we're taking bullying seriously and addressing it. Because apparently in Geneva, they didn't, and it's going to cost them. We have something we can learn from this. So.
Is there something you need brought back? If you remember, there was a policy that that was required that now within 24 hours of a bullying claim that you have to identify and communicate with both families. So it is something that is new and updated and different that we are working regularly on to make sure that we do communicate with our families.
I think let's examine what we're doing relative to, as compared to what Geneva managed to get itself into hot water over, so that we do not join them in that hot water. we're not having to write a big check. And it was purely a student issue. And everything I'm hearing based upon was Geneva administration refusing or going light on discipline for bullying. I just don't want us to have to write a check.
We need a consensus, or we can just add it?
Let's pull back current policy, and maybe not discuss specific instances or what we've been doing currently. I'm sure there's been plenty of bullying that's happened over the last year at all levels, so maybe we can have a couple examples of what happened, not specifics or names, and how we are handling that. I think would be a good starting point.
That's a tangible recommendation, thank you.
Every once in a while, I got something.
No, that's not my point. That's not
No,
that's not my point.
it's all right. You know,
Yeah,
my feelings I got thick skin.
No.
I have one too.
Well, I want to make the first one, consensus.
We good?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mine would be graduation requirements for kids with IEPs. What is our policy now? They don't graduate, or they don't get a diploma, if they only get a certificate. What does that look like? And what are some of the, reasons we don't give them a diploma or let them be a part of graduation?
And specifically, does that relate to continuation of services to age 22, is it still? 22 in one day?
They turn 22.
22. And walking without receiving the diploma then, in case they're doing vocational or like extension 300 that they had up in District 300?
I'm sorry,
She was talking. Walking without.
Walking without receiving the diploma if they would otherwise receive it, but that they're going to participate in, vocational, like many do, or, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Diploma versus certificate of completion.
But then get their diploma after their services are, once they're of age.
When they're.
So we don't cause any ripple effects to that.
They don't lose service.
So conversation about that, so.
Okay, so bring back current practice, bring back what we're currently doing.
Recommendations, I know the
Okay.
cycle has some recommendations.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Consensus?
I'm putting you on the, asking for recommendations from you. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Consensus? Yep. Okay. I have 2 topics of future agenda to bring back.
Anything else? Once, twice? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Public comment round 2. Is there anyone signed up? No? All right.
Dr. Atkins, you want to comment publicly?
No.
You're good.
No.
I plead the fifth. Okay, well, let's see. The Board of Education is scheduled for a closed session to discuss Illinois Open Meetings Act 2C1, where there will be no action taken following the session. Therefore, after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss Illinois Open Meetings Act 2C1 at 10:26 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mr. Kleisner.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye. Okay.